Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. This is another ATS News Mackenzie Shirilla deep dive. We've been deep diving into this case every Friday night. Been following this case since the whole story broke, but not on this channel until after the Netflix series came out, episode rather. And it's just been really, fascinating in trying to understand how this whole crime took place. And in doing so, we've kind of raised a few questions. And we have questions about Bubba and Rosie and steps made in this investigation. Thank you so much, Jay Warren, for your membership. 31 months. That's amazing. And I'm so appreciative of it. If you guys could just like the stream at this moment and we will start deep diving. I want to start off with something that I saw on TikTok, and I just think it's a good tone to kind of start off with. It's just remembering the victims. This page specifically is for Dom. So nothing against Davion by not, I don't know if he's in this one or not, but we honor the victims here. We just want to know how this happened. And in understanding how this happened, we've also realized we want to know what her intent was. She is adamant that there was no intent, And, just looking through things like we're going to text messages, her jail calls, etc., court documents, which, there was no grand jury. There was. So there was questions on, why wasn't Rosie subpoenaed to testify at the grand jury? Why wasn't Nina? For one, she was at Paul's house. And guys, I uploaded Paul's interview with police this week. So you can find that in the video section or in the Mackenzie Shirilla playlist. He had some interesting things to say. He's where they were before they got in the car to drive home. So everything that happened at Paul's house has been very vital in understanding how we got to the crash. And so his interview was interesting. Someday we'll go through live the interviews, but I've uploaded Dom's mother, brother, and now Paul's interview in the video area. So there was a grand jury. This is what's interesting, and we don't really ever hear anyone talk about the juvenile court process. Right now, Melly is reading through the transcripts of it. But it says, yes, Mackenzie Shirilla's case did involve a grand jury. Here's how the process unfolded. Because Shirilla was 17 years old at the time of the crash, the case began in juvenile court. The juvenile court held a bind over transfer hearing to determine whether there was probable cause to prosecute her as an adult. So the grand jury wasn't to decide guilt. Or like right now, there's other cases going on right now, and we've heard about the grand jury indicting people on like a DV, for example. And they determined that this person was guilty enough to be charged and indicted for DV. This isn't what that grand jury was determining. The juvenile grand jury was to find probable cause if she should be tried as an adult. The juvenile judge found probable cause on most of the charges, though not aggravated murder. So that's noteworthy too. Just different judges, obviously, and they transferred the case to the adult court. After the transfer, the grand jury returned and 12-count indictment charging her with 4 counts of murder, 4 counts of felonious assault, 2 counts of aggravated vehicular homicide, 1 count of drug possession, and 1 count of possessing criminal tools. So the grand jury did not decide guilt. Its role was to determine whether there was enough evidence, probable cause, to formally charge her in the adult court. So when we're wondering, why wasn't Rosie and them brought in to testify, it just seems like that wasn't necessary to find the probable cause about this going to the adult court. So I don't know. It's got a lot of questions. What I want to do is after we play this video, I want to iron out the statements that were made by Rosie in the Netflix documentary. So I've streamlined them and edited them all together where, we're not going through this hour and 41-minute documentary to hear everything she had to say. I recorded the audio and then put it together so we can just streamline, listen to it. We'll break it down. And then we're going to listen to Rotten Mango's new interview that apparently she spoke with Rosie. So we're going to get into that and hear what they had to say to Rotten Mango, who has her own YouTube channel. So we'll listen to that after we listen to everything Rosie had to say in the whatchamacallit, Netflix documentary. 45 months from Adrian. Thank you so much. And we've got another surprise too. Neat Noodle, welcome. Welcome. Thank you so much for your support. For always being here to support the channel. All of you guys, thank you so much. Okay. So let me pull up Rosie's statements.
Hey, yeah, can I just get a donut? Yeah, donut, bro.
I also think this clip too that was uploaded to TikTok from the trial, the adult court sentencing. So we'll get a little bit of this to give us some background into some of the things that Rosie says. Okay. So this is her bench trial in the adult court. This is the assistant prosecutor. So this whole time I was thinking that that was the prosecutor in the Netflix documentary. I realized for that county, it was the assistant. So I don't know. It's interesting that he did the Netflix documentary and like ran this whole trial as the assistant. So there's talk that Rosie spoke to a prosecutor, just not police, but I'm assuming it wasn't this guy because he's the one that says in Netflix that like, oh, I'm interested to hear what she said to you guys because she wouldn't talk to me. So this is the assistant prosecutor. So I don't know if that's different than the one Rosie spoke with, but I find it interesting. And hello, Toe Beans, good to see you. That that's not on record. Like Rosie apparently says she can prove that she spoke to the prosecutor. This is stuff she told Rotten Mango that she has on her logs, like where she can prove that she spoke with somebody, the prosecutor's office, she said. But like, where is this call? It'd be nice to know, like, was this on record? Apparently there's no record of it. I don't know. But we all want to know what Rosie had to say.
In regards to the impact that the defendant's conduct had on these families' lives. And we have received a series of letters that has been submitted on behalf of the defendant. In summarizing these, they describe her as a good student and a loving and caring person, and that she could never do something like this. And they continually, despite the verdict, refer to this as an accident and an unfortunate accident and tell you that she is also a victim. And there are just a few things that I think is important for the court to consider in determining a sentence today. Part of the evidence in this case and introduced in trial was evidence from the defendant's cell phone. There were search warrants executed on her various social media accounts, her school records, her medical records, things of this nature. And I think that who she actually was is directly contradictory to what is painted by the letter submitted on behalf of her today.
So this is where, before the judge decided, they showed social media posts by Mackenzie to kind of show, like, this is her behavior and this is how she was behaving after the crime. And these are the type of posts that she would post, even stuff that was old.
One moment.
Hi,
I'm not even
Coffee.
cool. I'm just one of those girls that can do a lot of drugs and not die.
Hi, Coffee and Skeletons. Good to see you.
Gotta figure like a pin, gotta figure like the doll. Don't care if you think I'm dumb, I don't care at all. Can't best sleep, I wanna be a god.
Sorry, I got to mute some of the music, but they're showing a TikTok that she made that has that music to it.
Shortly after the crash, Strongsville police were notified that they had received concerning emails from the community that the defendant and her mother were seeking employment with the Los Angeles modeling agency. Mackenzie Shirilla said to Vitali, "Thank you for the comment. I would love to work with you guys. I've been emailing you guys a lot. Such a great opportunity. Thank you."
Is there a date?
There is not a date on this, Your Honor. Based on the investigation, it was delivered to the police while the defendant was still in the mental health hospital. So it was during that time period. She was in the hospital for several weeks. Shortly after being released from the hospital, the police were provided additional videos of the defendant from her wheelchair as she attended a concert down in the Flats. And again, Your Honor, I'm introducing these to the court to show the shocking lack of remorse. This was something that was being exhibited while the investigation was still going on, before she was charged and arrested in November of last year. And these were the sort of things that were coming
Hey,
to the
Val,
police.
good to see
The
you.
shocking lack of remorse, coupled with the fact that the defendant was reported driving an automobile shortly after this event, that she was seen in Strongsville again driving a car, in spite of the fact that, as her mother testified, she got dizzy sometimes from a condition that she had to take salt pills for, in spite of the fact that it was, in fact, her mother who provided her with the car that she used to take Dominic and Davion's life. Halloween of last year, again, still before being charged, Mackenzie Shirilla celebrated Halloween with her friends at Ohio.
Good to see everybody. Just muting for copyright purposes.
Sure. Thank you.
But to just give you an idea, just to give you an idea of what was, they're really trying to paint, and which is circumstantial evidence. This is her behavior, and you can take from it what you will. The judge took it as, this looks terrible. And there wasn't a jury. Remember, bench trial.
We think the defendant has shown a shocking lack of remorse, Your Honor. We think that she has continually put forward that this was an accident, in spite of the fact that the evidence is in direct contradiction. Your Honor, you were on Progress Drive. You saw the evidence that was displayed in court. And Your Honor, we think that you are the person who is in the best position to decide an appropriate sentence. We have full confidence in the sentence that you'll give, Your Honor. Thank you. That I can say.
So again, this isn't to say, is she guilty? Is she innocent? Our research in these deep dives have, I think, taken a turn from, there's something suspicious about Rosie and Bubba for sure. I'm not even sure I believed everything Paul was saying in his interview. There's a lot of questions still around the blood that was taken as a sample. So many people have different, like, I heard this, no, it was this, or I read this and they did that. But the transcripts that Melly is reading through, basically on the stand in the juvenile court, the detective testified today that she read that the blood was sent to the morgue or to the coroner, or no, medical examiner. And it didn't seem like they tested it. There's something, listen, we're still ironing it all out, but her reading the transcripts, they didn't even interview Nina, who was at the house. She's at Paul's house, hanging out with Paul, Dom, Davion, Rosie, Bubba, Mackenzie. She never gets interviewed. Apparently her mom like tried to like pretty much put a stop to it. And then like as I'm watching the Netflix thing again, I'm realizing that, you know, there was a little breakup between Bubba and Rosie posting things about feeling betrayed and like talk about people thinking that that was because Bubba decided to speak with police. There's something strange to it all. There's even a phone call in the FOIA records between two detectives that can't come to a conclusion on the record, which I'll play right now, where they basically say whatever happened that night, Bubba's involved. And Bubba's real name is Landon. This is just stuff from the files that we've gone through. You know, so let's listen to what Rosie had to say as a streamline, and then we'll get into what she had to say to the channel Rotten Mango. So this, okay, so obviously you can see that this is going to be the phone call between the two detectives. Let me just turn this background music off while we listen to this. And then, yeah.
Council, please, Detective Hazoon.
And also, I want to emphasize, is this a situation, hi, Debbie, where, I mean, I'm open to this. Was Mackenzie overcharged? You know, 17 years old, charged with murder based off of hearsay, a lot of hearsay. There are, you know, the video, the Life 360. No one is denying that she's at fault, but it does kind of matter in the court process and through, you know, the justice system. Like, are people being overcharged? Is a teen, a 17-year-old, again, her birthday 18 was going to be in a few days. It's just something I'm open for now. Like, I'm doing the research, you know, like I'm not here coming out saying like, yes, I'm, you know, free Mackenzie right now. She's innocent. It's not like that. I'm not even saying she had a POTS thing. I just have a lot of questions about, you know, the fact that they didn't, some of the interviews, like Paul's interview was only like less than an hour. I think they interviewed Dom's brother, like it was just under an hour as well. Like, it just seems like without certain people's statements that were there that night, Nina and Rosie's, and it took a while to get Bubba's, you know, they were all avoiding the police. It's left a lot of questions. And it seems as though the police thought Landon, aka Bubba, had some sort of involvement.
Hi, Detective Chief Weaver again. Hey, Chief, how you doing? Not bad. So, just had a conversation with Landon. That was a very interesting conversation, I must say. He is not willing to talk. He says that he is not being threatened, and in his words, I'm at the top of the chain. Nobody messes with me. I'll just kick their ass. He seemed very. This is just my intuition or whatever. Whatever this is, he's involved.
It's so crazy because like we had just graduated high school and this is who I would hang out with every single day. Every single day I'd wake up and hang out with a combination of these people. There was me, Kenzie, Davion, Dom, my boyfriend, Bubba. I was like getting a phone call every single day or a text from Kenzie every day. What are we doing tomorrow? What are we doing the next day? Let's do this. Dom wants to go here. Davion wants to do this. Davion's there when he's laughing. He's the funniest guy. He's just goofy. And Dom and Kenzie, they're such a duo. They'd been together for 4 years. Like, those are my best friends that I hang out with every single day. And I was just with them. And it's so crazy. That split second, like, changed all of our lives forever. There were so many people there. And so many people were, like, asking so many questions to all of us. They're like, you were with them. What were you guys doing? What did they take? You know, they were on something. They didn't even give us a second to process what had just happened.
So already all I'm hearing from her is like when we listen to all her statements put together in an hour and 41 minutes, so far it's like she wants the sympathy. Like, she wants everyone to feel sorry for her. And, you know, like, you know, everyone was asking me questions. It's like, well, yeah, you were one of the last people to see them alive. Like, what? Of course. and there's statements coming out, first wave of rumors and hearsay that there was a fight or something that had taken place at Paul's house. And then now everything that you, Bubba, and Paul say, remember, they met. The day that they found out about the crash, the day of, later in that day, Rosie, Paul, and Bubba got together. So you're telling me that there's no chance that they like ironed out some story to stick to? Mackenzie was on the couch. She was sleeping. Paul was upstairs. He was sleeping. Everyone's asking us all these questions.
In high school is when I met Kenzie. We started like commenting on each other's Instagrams before we even talked to each other in person. We like comment, back and forth, or Snapchat. She'd make cute little TikTok videos like of her trying on outfits. She would come to school with like a purse instead of a bag, which I thought was really cute. I got along with her well because I'm like, you're cute. She's like, you're cute. And I'm like, okay, we get along so well. I met her, I had 200K on TikTok and on YouTube. She had like a few thousand followers. She always wanted to be a model like me. So me and Kenzie would hang out all the time and just go do photo shoots. With Kenzie came Dom. Dom came Kenzie everywhere they went. Dom would buy her clothes. He really loved designer stuff and just name brand. As typical high schoolers do, we were kind of like the stoners a little bit. It would just be back-to-back fun. I was just texting her to bring over some weed for the night. We were also talking about doing the mushrooms, which is why they brought them with them and they had them in the car with them. The police called to set up an interview and I was like, I'm not doing it. People always say the police will like try to say crazy things, especially if you're like alone and you're a teenager. It doesn't seem like we're trying to figure out what happened in the accident. It seems like we're trying to track down the next drug dealers.
Now, there was interviews conducted in this case that had the DEA in the interviews as well. So there was definitely an investigation going on because obviously with the mushrooms and weed in the car and the scale and things that were uncovered, that of course was kind of, they wanted to hear about what happened at Paul's house, Rosie. Everyone went for an interview with their parents. So this whole cops say crazy things, especially to teens, alone in there. And it's like, yeah, that does happen. And get this, her father is a former police chief. So when we think about like, how come she didn't get called for the grand juries or why wasn't there more like, because the officers even asked in the transcripts for the juvenile court how many times he tried to get a hold of Rosie. And like he said, he tried to call her twice. It's like 2 times. That's it. Like we have a possible double homicide here or vehicular manslaughter or whatever like statute or think where you think this falls. And you only tried to call her twice and then like wrote it off as like she doesn't want to speak with you guys. And it's like, oh, I guess like what are they supposed to do? But when we listened to Landon, aka Bubba's police interview last week, we ended up hearing him trying to explain to the cops like why he was dodging their phone calls and stuff. So a lot of questions, And again, if we're trying to figure out if there was intent or not behind Mackenzie's actions that night, Rosie is kind of key for understanding that also.
First of all, it wasn't a party at all because in my opinion and in everybody that was there, we call that a sleepover, and that was just a friend sleepover that we would normally do. I brought like a coloring book and like colored pencils. We were watching YouTube videos. We were having deep conversations.
So doing art, the coloring book, watching YouTube videos, having deep conversations, but yet you want us to believe that none of you guys took those mushrooms. And remember, Davion has a Snapchat message to somebody about how he was tripping at the time. So that's why I keep going back to this blood that was tested. And, they keep saying that it came back negative as mushrooms. And then other people are saying that they didn't get the blood sample in time, or after 24 to 48 hours, you're not going to be able to test for mushrooms. So all this blood information needs to be ironed out, and not by somebody who's close to the investigation, like a friend or family. Like I need the transcript page and number from both trials of people talking about the blood sample as well as like medical things. Because I'm telling you guys, people make mistakes all the time. I just would like to know and read it for myself, because the only thing that I'm able to read so far is a transcript in the juvenile court that Melly read tonight that says basically that they didn't get the blood in time from the medical examiner. So all this stuff matters. Not, especially when we're charging a 17, barely 18-year-old, and getting justice for the victims too,
Sitting around, and we were also talking about doing the mushrooms, but then by the time they got over, it was like 12 a.m. and we're all like, it's too late.
And this whole like, it's too late because they got there at 12 a.m. Well, we heard Bubba say on the JFK interview that they got there at 11:30, he said. Now, Rosie's saying in the Netflix documentary they got there at midnight. I mean, these things matter when it comes to everyone's story being the same, and like stories don't change. You know what I mean? Like if it's the truth, like everyone pretty much has the same recollection of it. And without her having a police record, it's kind of like we have to go by this Netflix one, and it's varying from statements that Bubba has made. And they leave and they're up at 5:30ish in the morning. So why is it that midnight, if we're to believe Rosie's, we'll give her the benefit of the doubt, they got there at midnight. Why would that have been too late to do the mushrooms? Because that's still, you guys were still up all night, even though she claims that Mackenzie was sleeping on the couch. Like, I don't even know if I believe Mackenzie was sleeping on the couch, like they all say.
No mushrooms?
Yeah, we were all just kind of like, it's really late, and we had like weed to smoke, so we just smoked weed. Kenzie didn't even smoke that night. Kenzie was sleeping by like 3 a.m. All I remember is Dom just like petting her head all night and just like cuddling up to her on the couch, and she was sleeping and he was just like caressing her hair. There was not one argument, there was not one moment of tension, there was not one bad vibe towards anybody. And then really early in the morning, around 5, Dom came into the kitchen and I was like, are you guys leaving? I was with them every single day, and it wasn't daily arguments, it wasn't weekly arguments, it wasn't even like anything crazy like that. Mackenzie loved her life a lot, and she really liked what she had going on with Dom. I didn't think she would get arrested at all for this. That's the last thing I'm thinking about, is now she's gonna be arrested. I'm thinking about, oh my god, our friends are dead, how are we gonna recover from this? I've seen so many people be like, this dramatic girl, she's going to prison worrying about her bracelets, but all of her bracelets are like Dom bracelets. She just didn't want to break the things that Dom had given her. It's like the last thing that she has. She was so sad about it all. I would never ever see her purposely wanting to hurt herself. Say that is, and she's so sad like mentally, I don't think that's the way to do it. Her birthday was coming up. She had an expensive designer outfit ready to wear. She had presents ready, wrapped up from Dom that she still has never opened. Nothing makes sense. It really doesn't. This video was made in 2021. You can see the date right there, April 2021, a whole year before. Anybody my age like grew up with Marina and the Diamonds. This is just like a song that everybody knows, and then it turned into a TikTok trend. We all have made our videos to this exact sound, like to the trend. I post probably like 5 to 7 TikToks a day. At that rate of content, I don't even remember what I said yesterday. You cannot use that against her.
So those were her Netflix statements streamlined. Again, she only got, how long was that? Hold on. Let me. Altogether, she only had like less than 5 minutes in the whole Netflix documentary. And Bubba said they like filmed and stuff for like crazy amount. I want to say he said like 18 hours, but they lie, it seems. So I don't know. That's crazy. So when they all say like, oh, she wasn't even smoking that night, like, I don't even know if I believe that. They're like, oh, she was coughing up black stuff, blah, blah, blah. I don't remember anything being talked about like in her medical stuff that talked about like her having like coughing fits or whatever. So I don't know if I believe that. And when she says, and then right around 5 a.m, Dom walked in the kitchen and I was like, are you guys leaving? I don't know if that conversation is accurate either. Like right before they leave, was she really surprised that they were leaving, or did something lead up to that where it was like, yeah, it's time to go? Do you know what I mean? Like, I really don't believe anything that she had to say. But going back to the intentions that Mackenzie had that night and the questions I have around it, it's like when people say you should read the text messages, it's like I have, and I've listened to Melly read them. And hello. Oh, I see there's a hello raid. Hi, guys. So good to see you. And thank you so much, Hella. I appreciate that. Wait, where is... I'm looking for my special... course. Can't find it. Oh, here it is. If Hella's still here. Okay.
I was like getting a phone call every single day or a text from Mackenzie every day. What are we doing tomorrow?
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm not sure I believe much of Bubba, Rosie. Let's see. Now I watched the first half of her Rotten Mango video, but I haven't finished it all because she's talking about the statements that they were able to gather, her and her team, from Rosie. So she's been doing deep dives on this case. Also, this episode, we're not watching the whole thing. We'll just go through what was said from Rosie and Bubba. And so these are the most recent statements. We did go through his interview with JFK that was in, I think, June. So let's see what Rosie and Bubba had to say.
About talking to the police, cooperating with the investigation, that they're not defending, but somewhat supporting Mackenzie, even though they've been friends with Davion for way longer. There's just a lot of questions netizens have. So we asked them, and Rosie and Bubba responded. Now, I will say that I was not on that phone call. There was a schedule overlap, but also we thought it would be best for me to remain as objective as possible. And I thought the easiest way would be to not be on that phone call. I gave my researchers a list of questions that I had. My researchers also had their own list of questions, and we were just rapid fire, making sure that everything got answered. And I will say that Rosie and Bubba do not have seemed to be at least evasive to any of the questions. I did, of course, try my best to verify their statements, but there are some that are, for obvious reasons, impossible to verify. And for those, I'm just going to point out there's no way to verify that. And at times where I do attempt to verify with the FOIA file, I'm just going to walk you through my steps and thought process of how I tried to verify information, just so we can be as transparent as possible. Rosie and Bubba first stated that they felt the Netflix documentary was extremely edited and twisted in a way that does not represent how they truly feel. Rosie told us that she was under the impression that the Netflix doc was talking to her and Bubba about the viewpoint of losing friends in such a tragic way at such a young age. She says, I just feel like it really was twisted in a way that we never anticipated. Rosie states that it wasn't what she was expecting to represent her feelings about the whole situation. So they were describing that Rosie had an 8-hour-long interview with producers. Bubba had
8 hours, and she got less than 5 minutes of her statements on there. Is it too fast for you guys? I have it at 1.25. It's fine for me, but you guys let me know.
a 15-hour-long interview, and
15 hours, Bubba. Is it sped up too much? It's good for you, fine for you.
it's just like rapid fire questions all day. And they said that they answered each and every single one of them. And when they saw the final documentary, they even thought the original documentary was going to be a 3-part docuseries, but it got cut down to just 1.5 hours. Rosie states she felt like they just took out a lot of things for simplicity's sake. They never got an early viewing of the documentary either. And when it did release, Rosie and Bubba stayed up till like 3 a.m. to watch it. And they state that they were taken aback by how much was cut out. For like 8 hours, 15 hours, they say like it's only like 15 minutes make it in.
Not even 15 minutes. I mean, maybe if we added Bubba's up, but he has absolutely no substance to add. But our breakdown of his interviews recently and his police interview, there's a lot that he's one of those people that I think just keeps talking, even though he should just stop, but he's like nervous or trying to deflect and stuff like that. But yeah, we heard these complaints from them to JFK that they just felt like everything was cut, this and that.
And they thought that it was not a good representation of their interviews, is what they state to us. Rosie shares her.
Imagine their like shock and surprise when they realized that like they had such little airtime in the video or in the documentary.
grievances with the way the documentary cut her parts, stating that she felt a lot of trust with the production team. She says they did Don't Fuck with Cats, which is honestly great. We think it's a great film. Everybody loves that. We just watched it a while ago. So they had a lot of reputable films. I thought they would take our story responsibly, and they were always super nice every time we communicated with them. And we really poured our hearts out, and they came into our house like multiple times. They felt it was just not accurate of how they feel. So how do they feel? The biggest question that we had for Rosie, other than what happened that night, was why would you not talk to the police, but you want to talk to Netflix? That also seemed to be the biggest point of contention on the internet when it comes to Rosie. I did see through the police file, throughout the police report, there are multiple mentions in the detective's incident report that he has reached out to Rosie and she has declined to speak with him. He's like reaching out multiple days. This is a major, completely understandable point that's being.
But it's more than just she spoke to Netflix and not documentary, or she spoke to Netflix and not the police. It's she spoke to Netflix, which was after the conviction and knowing that Mackenzie's like put away for all this. Because we've seen the Lori Vallow case. They came out with the documentary on Netflix prior to her trial. We saw Alex Murdaugh. They came out with his documentary on Netflix prior to his trial. So it's not unheard of. In fact, I just saw, I think Hulu or Peacock is coming out with a D4VD, David and the Celeste Rivas case. Like there's going to be a documentary there. He hasn't even been a year since he's been arrested. So it's more to me than just the detective tried to reach out twice and then she decided to speak with Netflix instead of the police. It's she spoke with Netflix after the conviction and the case is closed. Like that's even more red flag.
Made online. I too am of the belief of like, how can you really grieve the loss of two friends, but you did everything you could to avoid helping the investigators figure out the truth of what happened that night? It doesn't make sense. It does give cover-up vibes, understandably. So we asked, why did she not talk to the investigators? In the documentary, in the Netflix documentary, the prosecutor is also interviewed, and he states, quote, "You have no idea how hard I try to get Rosie Graham to talk to me, to cooperate with me. But it's good to hear that she talked to you guys. I'm fascinated to hear what she has to say." So we asked Rosie, and she states she did talk to the prosecutor.
Really?
Yeah, she.
Okay, so here's something that I just found out again after watching it again for the clips that we went over in the beginning. That's not the prosecutor. That's the assistant prosecutor. So the courtroom that we saw, that's the assistant prosecutor. The Netflix guy who said, "Oh, I'm fascinated to hear what she had to say because she wouldn't speak with me." That's the assistant prosecutor. She's claiming to Rotten Mango's team that Rosie's saying that, no, I did have a conversation, but it was with the prosecutor. So is it not the assistant prosecutor that Netflix has him saying, like, she didn't talk to me? Like, and also, like, where is this prosecutor? Because he had the assistant prosecutor try this very, like, high profile case, I would say. So I find that interesting, too.
She says, quote, "I did speak with the prosecutor, and I don't really know what got lost in communication with them." She later mentions that she had 2 phone calls with the prosecutors. One was an hour long, the other one was 30 minutes long, and that she has the phone record to prove these calls happened. Now, here's what I did to.
And again, like, where are these calls? Was the prosecutor the one that talked to her and not that assistant prosecutor? So he's stating, like, oh, she wouldn't speak with me, or were they both there? And you know, it's just not on record. It's just very interesting that it's not on record too. Do you people really believe anything Rosie has said? No. 1 Corinthians, I do not. I don't believe that they didn't trip that night. Oh, sorry, I was touching the mic. I hope that wasn't affecting things. I'm a few minutes behind. I think Rosie and Baba were hoping to get something more out of the Netflix doc, like a social media career boost. And that's the thing too. Like she says something about like, when I met Mackenzie, I had like 200 and blah, 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 thousand followers on my TikTok and YouTube. And then she's also talking about how like, well, I don't want to talk to the police because, you know, a teen by myself, they could do some crazy things. And it's like, then you go there with a lawyer. Like, we're getting justice for your 2 friends who you also want to say, like, I spent all this time with them and they were my best friends. Okay, so unfortunately, you might have to lawyer up, but still go on record, you know, help the wheels of justice here, because all we have is some hearsay and it's not working well for Mackenzie, who's also your friend, who's still alive.
verify this statement. Like I said, there are multiple mentions in the detective report of trying to get Rosie to come in for an interview. There is no mention that she ever did. However, Rosie does state that she talked to the prosecutor, not the detective. So in the detective's report, he's like, Rosie won't talk to me, Rosie won't talk to me. Rosie tells us she talked to the prosecutor, two different people. She says this. So
Yes, two different people, but also a different person than that one in the Netflix documentary in court. That's the assistant prosecutor.
there's all this talk online that nobody cooperated, and I think it's the way that documentary was edited, where I was explaining the initial police hesitation, and they cut it with the prosecutor, which is not even the police. The prosecutor didn't call us originally, Rosie, and she states she did talk to the prosecutor.
Really?
And she never did. It says originally, and I explained it on the documentary in depth. And once Mackenzie was arrested, the prosecutor called me. It went to voicemail. I called him back, and I have phone records of 2 phone calls.
Hold on. And once Mackenzie was arrested, the prosecutor called me. It went to voicemail. So you avoided it. I called him back, and I have phone records of 2 phone calls with him. Okay, we don't care about the phone records. We care about the conversation. One was half an hour, and the other one was an hour long. Again, that's an interesting amount of time, and then this is after Mackenzie's already been arrested. So once they had probable cause or enough to get her for it, then Rosie felt comfortable to speak to somebody. That's also suspect. Do you know what I mean? The order of this. So once she realizes Mackenzie's the one in cuffs, once Mackenzie's in cuffs, then she wanted to talk to somebody, but it wasn't law enforcement. It was the prosecutor, who wasn't the assistant prosecutor, saying he couldn't get a hold of her. Interesting.
It's half an hour, and the other one was an hour long.
The guy who's saying that in the Netflix doc?
Yeah.
That's the prosecutor.
Yeah.
So
That's the assistant prosecutor. I'm assuming there's somebody above him, because Netflix literally has his name and then it says assistant prosecutor. So this is all getting convoluted. Do you understand? And it's no shade against Rotten Mango. I don't know if maybe, but not talk to others, but not the cops. But talk to others, but not the cops. Right. And after Mackenzie's in cuffs and arrested, and then talks to Netflix after she's been convicted and in prison. So the order of the way that Rosie decides to make her moves and come out and speak is very interesting and noteworthy too. So again, I don't know, I'm assuming that this guy is not the prosecutor that spoke with her. He's, like we saw in his title in the Netflix, the assistant prosecutor. So I think that's where everyone's kind of getting confused on did she speak? Did she not speak? It would make it much easier to kind of iron this out if this call had been recorded and could be released. Hi, Dolly. So good to see you. Loved your live earlier with Hella. You guys, you cracked me up. Again, it was a crazy week with the JLR DV situation. We are going to touch on it eventually, but you guys handled it so well this week with that news. So if you guys haven't checked that out, you guys should check out Excited Utterance with Dolly and Hella if you want the update on JLR and Magnolia. But yeah, I just think there's a little bit of confusion with who Rosie spoke with. But if it was on a recorded call, we could compare voices. We could be like, oh, this is her call with the prosecutor. Okay, yeah, that isn't the one on the documentary or in the courtroom, because we can hear the voices and this guy's the assistant.
Prosecutor, she's saying they did speak.
Yeah.
Then why did he in the documentary saying?
She thinks it's the way the producers edited it.
Oh, so she's saying the prosecutor could say, "Oh, you have no idea how much I've tried. I'm fascinated."
Yeah.
Wait.
Well, I have my theories about that too.
Oh, okay.
And so she says, and I remember he asked me, he said, I'm going to ask you every question I would ask you on the stand. And I answered every question. Then he went on the documentary, and it's cut with me saying, I didn't initially want to talk to the police because I thought it was a drug investigation. And then the prosecutor saying, oh, I'm so fascinated with what she's going to say, insinuating that I never spoke with him, but I did. And I was under the impression that I would be testifying during the trial, and I was willing to. And he said, okay, I'm going to call you whenever to come in to testify. And I was like, great. and I never heard back. Now, I did find in the FOIA that there is a grand jury subpoena for Rosie that was in fact issued after Mackenzie's arrest. And there are no notes from any sort of conversation that Rosie had with the prosecutor. I think it could be possible that this conversation with the prosecutor was due to the grand jury subpoena. So she's refusing to talk to the police. She gets a grand jury subpoena. The prosecutor calls her, and she does have these 2 phone calls with the prosecutor from what I guess I tend to believe that, right? Now, so far, all signs point to the fact that she probably did talk to the prosecutor, because there is a subpoena, which means if she did not cooperate, they could have, like in the David case with Neo, arrested her. Now, does it mean that every time someone doesn't cooperate with the prosecutor after a grand jury subpoena, they're automatically arrested? No. So like, there's no way to factually say this is correct.
And again, in the beginning of the stream, we read through what that grand jury was about. And the grand jury that took place in this case was in the juvenile court. And it wasn't to determine if she was guilty. It was to determine if she should be tried as an adult. So the grand jury did not decide guilt. Its role was to determine whether there was enough evidence, probable cause, to formally charge her in the adult court after the juvenile transfer. She later waived her right to a jury trial, meaning there was no trial jury. Instead, the court was decided by the judge. The court in the case was decided by the judge. So, that in the David case, his friend got called to the grand jury, and that was to determine if they could charge him for murder on Celeste. But he didn't show and was like avoiding, so then he was arrested. So it's different because this one wasn't to get her guilt. It was to see if she would go to the adult court. So that was something else that we've kind of ironed out too.
It doesn't happen all the time. It's just like you could get arrested if you don't cooperate. But she states that it was after Mackenzie's arrest, and the grand jury subpoena was issued after Mackenzie's arrest.
I see. Okay. So the timeline adds up.
Yes. So it seems like from...
See, I don't know for 1 Corinthians, because if she got arrested and then Rosie speaks to the prosecutor, I'm wondering if it would have helped Mackenzie, because they decided not to go. It just seems like, was there pressure on Mackenzie's lawyer? Like, I don't know. There's a lot of things people are really suspect when it comes to her attorney as well. People have mentioned he didn't even look surprised when the judge gave the verdict. Like, it was like he knew it was coming. Again, these are just opinions and just stuff that has been, gathered just from opinions and us watching. My opinion! But it's interesting. Like, I'm wondering if they were hoping she would be a good witness for the prosecution, and then they realized that she wouldn't be a good witness for them. I don't know. It's so hard because we don't have this phone call that she had with the prosecutor office, like, on record. So it's like, it kind of, with the lack of transparency, it kind of makes us feel like, okay, so then was something being done behind closed doors? Or it just seems like there's questions when there's not enough transparency. And I believe these phone calls with Rosie, I wish they were recorded.
End of July to November, she doesn't talk to any detective. And then after the grand jury subpoena, it seems like that is when she talks to the prosecutor on these 2 phone calls. So if that's the case, that means Rosie did in fact talk to prosecutors, but it was after being subpoenaed and it was after Mackenzie's arrest. It's kind of what I feel like I can piece together through the FOIA, right? Now, the prosecutor states to Netflix, "You have no idea how hard I tried to get Rosie Graham to talk to me."
And again, it says the assistant prosecutor. So I don't know if Rosie's getting confused about who she spoke to, or, did somebody lie? Like, I can't imagine the prosecutor's going to be like, I didn't get a chance to speak with her. And then Rosie's like, we spoke for almost 2 hours. Is that what's happening? Like, did Rosie speak with the guy in the Netflix documentary and she's confused why he's saying they didn't speak? Like, I don't know. I don't want to say that that's what's happening, but like, I don't know. This is all getting confusing. Her saying she did speak with somebody, etc.
Which, I mean, it insinuates that Rosie Graham didn't talk, but also it doesn't, because he's just saying like I had to work on this a lot, right? I tried really hard. You have no idea how hard I tried. And then it cuts with him saying to cooperate with me. So
And remember, she's already arrested. So they had to get grand jury to decide, if she was going to go to adult court. And then they also like arrested her and then Rosie speaks. So it's like they had enough to arrest her without Rosie speaking. So they were just like, screw it. And then they're like open to hear what Rosie had to say. Like maybe it would help their case and then it didn't. I don't know. You guys share your thoughts.
You have no idea how hard I tried to get Rosie Graham to talk to me, to cooperate with me. But it's good to hear that she talked to you guys. I'm fascinated to hear what she has to say. He says to talk to me, to cooperate with me. It could be possible that Rosie did talk to the prosecutor, but maybe he said that because she might not have cooperated in the way that he was anticipating.
Okay.
Like the fact that he's saying, I'm fascinated to hear what she has to say. Like maybe there's an insinuation of we did grand jury subpoena her, but maybe they got nothing out of that phone call. Maybe those two phone calls, there was nothing that they felt was.
So why didn't she talk to the police and them in the initial 3-4 months?
Yeah. Oh, there's a whole thing. We asked them about that too.
Okay.
This is noteworthy too, Caroline. Thank you for that. As a practical matter, they often do not write up uncooperative witnesses because they'd be useless on the stand anyways. Something to keep in mind.
So I do want to note that if there was, these phone calls, it's really hard to verify if they did occur in the sense of, or like even the substance of the phone calls, because if it were to have happened after a grand jury subpoena, a lot of things that are pertaining to grand juries are sealed typically. So it's just like but the wording there is very interesting. How hard he tried to get Rosie Graham to talk to him, to cooperate with him, and fascinating.
Like when he did speak with her for an hour and a half, it was useless information, you guys think? So he's still considering it like uncooperative? Is that what we're kind of concluding?
Needed to hear what she has to say. Another interesting point is Rosie mentioned to our researchers, quote, and he said, okay, I'm going to call you whenever to come testify. And I was like, great. And I never heard back, which could indicate that the prosecutors felt like she was unhelpful to the prosecution's case.
Yeah. Because that's the thing. You can call somebody back and they could ask you questions for an hour and a half and you could still be like, I really don't recall. And like we're going around and round in circles. You're not really giving me anything.
And these are all me just like tinfoil hatting this and coming up with my own opinions. I still want to note, even if this were true in a hypothetical parallel universe, even if Rosie wasn't helpful to the prosecution's case, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean that she wasn't cooperating to the best of her abilities. It just means
it wasn't useful.
Yeah. I just tried to verify whatever statement I could with.
It seems like Diva Girl, the other narrative is Rosie basically saying like, there's nothing suspicious about me. Like I did come forward and speak with the prosecutors. But it's like her kind of painting it as like, I was helpful. I don't know why he said I was uncooperative. And it's like, well, it was an hour and a half and it really wasn't helpful.
Whatever relevant information I could find that is verified through the FOIA, but I want to state conclusively, I can't really prove anything to anyone. Like I'm just trying to verify people's statements and this is how my thought process worked. This is how we ended up. As for why Rosie and Bubba were so hesitant to talk to the authorities, because Rosie never talked to the detective. Bubba took just like a long time, like almost, I think he talked to them near October, if I'm not.
The crash was July 31st. So here's the thing too. Again, I'm playing devil's advocate. I believe Mackenzie's where she needs to be. Now I'm at, was she overcharged? Was there proof of her intent? That this was malicious. I go back and forth. So that's why we're doing these deep dives. I want to have a better understanding. They're pulling up in the sentencing, which I showed in the beginning of the stream, Mackenzie's social medias. And they looked questionable, obviously. She's at the concert that she was supposed to go with Dom, and she's sitting there, and having a good time. And she's at Halloween stuff in October, and they used that behavior against her at sentencing. Here, Landon, aka Bubba, is waiting to be interviewed months. He goes off to college and he basically said in his police interview last week that like they were going to move on with their life. And he gets kind of like chased down for this interview in October. So if we're going to fault Mackenzie for her behavior, which I'm not saying that it was normal or, it didn't look good, obviously. Like, I can acknowledge that. But what Landon and Rosie are doing also is their behavior after this crash, which is a criminal matter in the eyes of the law and in court. And their behavior is questionable as well. You know, like Mackenzie and her parents, like they spoke, even though we have Steve saying like, don't talk to her. Her lawyer says not to talk. There was conversations that the family and Mackenzie's were having with law enforcement. Landon and Rosie are the ones that weren't doing that. So if we're going to hold behavior against Mackenzie, I think it's only fair that we kind of do the same thing for Rosie and Bubba. And their behavior is odd and questionable as well.
Mistaken. So it's just like weeks of the detectives hounding him to sit down for the investigators. They said that they had a very strong reason for why, and they state that it's not to help Mackenzie. They state that there were 7 people there at the night at the gathering of Paul's house: Paul, Nina, Rosie, Bubba, Mackenzie, Dom, and Davion.
And again, they never have any type of record at all, not even with the prosecutor, with Nina. It's like, we're going by hearsay to convict this girl, and we won't even get hearsay from people who were there that night. It's just a little bit of holes in this investigation that I'm just like, why? Even with how short some of the interviews are, I'm just like, you know, I just feel like there could be more information to gather, and they cut like the interviews. Some of them are like less than an hour.
Dom and Davion obviously can't tell the police what happened that night. Mackenzie's the one being investigated. Paul, Nina, Rosie, and Bubba. Paul actually spoke with the detectives. Bubba says they all had interviews lined up right after Paul. So Paul was the first one to go in for an interview. And then it was going to be like Nina, Rosie, Bubba. Like they all had it lined up and scheduled. And I could actually see on the detective's report, like Rosie had an interview scheduled. But after Paul gets out of his interview, he communicates with the group. And according to Rosie and Bubba, obviously we didn't talk to Paul, but he communicates with them that the interview's not good. They were like, he was basically telling them, this is what they say. Yeah, it's not good in there. And
okay, so I uploaded this week Paul's police interview. And there is a moment where the cop or the detective says, like, in good faith, I have to let you guys know that I've gathered cell phone information from you guys from Mackenzie and stuff. So he was letting Paul know, like, anything you're about to tell me, like, just so you know, I have Mackenzie's phone, and like I might be able to back up like what you're saying or corroborate what you're saying, or I might be able to compare what you're saying to what we already know. So interesting that Rosie and Bubba are saying they spoke with Paul, and Paul's like, yeah, this isn't good, because then all of a sudden they don't want to speak with them. And mind you, Paul had his mother in there with him, which is understandable. But it's interesting also that Paul's mother comes out in the interview with saying that they spoke with a lawyer prior to going down there. And it's like, okay, it's understandable. So I don't want to fault people, like, because you need a lawyer. You know what I mean? If you're getting involved with things, like, yeah, prepare to get some legal counsel. So they get legal counsel before Paul and his mom, before going in for the police interview. Paul gets out of it, and now we're hearing that Rosie and Bubba are telling Rotten Mango's team that, like, yeah, you know, Paul talked to us and it was like not good. So then Rosie doesn't even bother, and Bubba didn't even want to either. And then when Bubba did, he says in his police interview that Rosie broke up with him because of something that happened in their past, he said. Right. Like past, like over summer. And then even other people in the Netflix documentary mentioned how Rosie was posting things on social media about betrayal. Now, is that because Bubba spoke with police in October? It's just all these things that are like, but why? You know, like, why are we hiding things?
Objectively, I didn't find anything necessarily alarming. He was basically obviously we didn't talk to Paul, but he communicates with them that the interview is not good. They were like, he was basically telling them, this is what they say. Yeah, it's not good in there. And objectively, I didn't find anything necessarily alarming. Granted, I think being asked questions by the police for such a serious investigation and asking about shrooms and purchasing shrooms and tripping, I can understand maybe it heightens someone's emotions and makes people overthink. I do believe that Paul's mom was in the interview room as well, which could heighten the feelings of stress and anxiety.
And I don't know if you guys listened to Paul's interview. I suggest you do. It's right on my playlist and under the video section, but I don't know. Everyone's like, oh, he's probably the most truthful out of all of them. It's like, I'm not ready for that title yet. Yeah, Rosie and Bubba are still together. They are 9 years. But oddly, during the time of the investigation, before she's convicted and put into prison, Bubba and Rosie are on a break. So take that for what you will. And one of them spoke with police and the other one didn't.
When talking about having friends over and smoking weed when your mom is right there and there's investigators in front of you, and it is a very serious matter because 2 people are dead. So I can completely understand the heightened emotions. However, there's nothing particularly stand out about Paul's interview where objectively from a third party I can say, oh my God, like abort mission, like this is bad, right? But I can see.
And that's what's interesting. It's like if it's true, and again, this is more hearsay from Bubba and Rosie, that Paul said it's not good. I would gather that was a true statement because then Bubba and Rosie didn't speak with law enforcement until months later. Bubba. So obviously they weren't ready, like how the detectives had them lined up for who's next. They all just were like, yeah, no, this isn't going to be good. So that also leads me to think Paul was not honest.
So you saw his interview too?
Yes.
And the reason why I'm saying that Paul was not honest is because it seems like there was some nervousness in other people's statements, maybe matching or not matching his first ones. He was the first one. So everybody's got to be able to say exactly what Paul was saying in his for it to be believable.
Okay.
Now, Rosie relayed to us that Paul was kind of getting freaked out by the line of questioning. I could verify this. There were questions about guns.
Guns? Like, do they own guns?
Yes. So they were specifically asking if they ever saw Dom with a gun, if a gun came out that night at the gathering.
Did you ever see him with a gun?
I know he had one.
I never saw him. That night, did anything about a gun come out?
Asking if they'll just look in their backyard and see if they notice anything, which is like kind of like a crazy ask. They were like, well, if you see anything in your backyard, like if you see guns, drug paraphernalia, like they were just like, if you see anything.
Do you guys have a backyard? It's like a garden type area. Anything new? Does it look like maybe somebody's hid something in there gun wise? Yeah, do me a favor. When you go home, just kind of look through your garden.
They were asking if Dom was jealous of Kenzie's friendship with Paul, which Paul is like, well, no, because he knows I'm gay.
So if he's saying just look in your backyard, like why didn't the cop say like, do you mind if we take a look on your property? Or like, I don't know. That's weird to me.
Well, he knows I'm gay, so he's, you know.
I mean, I don't think that part is necessarily frightening, but I do think, or at least the way it played out about saying, oh, well, no, Dom's not jealous because he knows I'm gay. But I do think the part about the guns, that probably did freak Paul out. It was like pretty extensive questioning about the guns. And I could see how he communicated that probably to Rosie and Bubba. So I think that the whole gun thing happened because I think Dom owned guns or something of that sort. But there was just a lot of focus on the guns for.
And remember, we've kind of been talking about this for a while. Sorry. We've been talking about, nobody knows where Dom's stuff is. His gun that he allegedly had, his cash, nothing can be accounted for. So then we go back to Rosie saying herself that she drove by the crash site that morning. So it's like, I don't know. Where is his cash? Where is his gun? Where is the laptop that was seen in the vehicle as well when they turned down the street?
brief moment in time in that Paul interview. So I think it did freak Paul out. So I think there was just a lot of things happening. Like they're asking about guns, they're questioning him about drugs that night, and 2 people are dead. And there's just, I think he could be very frightened after this interview. Now, one thing that I did take note of, but I didn't particularly know how to feel about it, was that I did take note that in the interview with Paul, and this is before our researchers spoke with Rosie and Bubba, there was a DEA agent from the Drug Enforcement Administration. Now, the DEA officer mainly gave a whole little like mini lecture at the end of the interview that he's just like, oh, well, don't, weed is not a gateway drug. Drugs are bad. You're going to college. You look like a good kid. Don't be doing drugs. Like, don't be hanging out with the wrong people. Just because there's talks of them trying to buy shrooms and trying to take shrooms. And so there was just like a whole drugs can ruin your future and your lives type of conversation.
Drugs are kind of my thing. You? He's a DEA agent. Okay.
You seem like a really good kid.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Very polite, well-spoken, honest. I think you may have some friends that you should be real cautious about. And I think everyone says weed's not a gateway drug, shrooms, this and that. Be careful.
The DEA.
It's very interesting the advice the DA agent said. Like, a lot of people say weed and shrooms aren't the gateway drug. Be careful. What about alcohol? Sorry, it's just very interesting to me, like the way that everybody just kind of is like, weed, take it for what you will. Everyone's got their own opinion. I really truly feel like alcohol is the gateway drug. Do we know there was a laptop? So that was a new discovery that we kind of found out through the research on Melly's channel. And in the police notes that she read through, they basically acknowledge what we've been saying here is, when we zoomed in a couple weeks ago about, and I have a video on it. It's on the playlist, guys. Subscribe and like the videos. And there's a lot of deep diving here, but they note that there was a screen, possibly a laptop, in the car being shown. When they turned down, like at that light, and they turned down the road, there was a light that was being illuminated. And then in the police interview, I believe Dom's mother's, it stated that like it was it was all cracked or like destroyed or something. So that all matters too in the lead up. Not so much like what was, it just matters, what was being shown in that car that suddenly it turned into they're hitting a building.
Agent, I don't know why he was there.
Is he here just to talk?
That's what I thought, right? Yeah. But I guess maybe his presence alone, whether it was not important, because sometimes DEA agents will also just like support other investigations. Yeah. I don't know, right? But it could also be the fact that there is a drug element to Mackenzie's case. She was found with shrooms on her person, and she was.
It absolutely feels like there was a drug element. Even with Rosie's statement, like, it didn't seem like we were trying to figure out what happened in the crash. It seemed like we were trying to nail the next drug dealer. I don't know. It's like, I just wonder if the approach with law enforcement was bad. And think about that too. So Paul told Rosie and Bubba after his interview that it's not good. And they decide to cancel, and Nina, can't forget Nina. They all decide like, nah, we're not going to talk with police then. This is after Paul realized that there's a DEA agent in the room as well. Like, this isn't just we're speaking and we're sitting down with the local homicide detective or the local detectives or even a car crash detective or like highway patrol group or whatever. Like California has their group. Some states have like specific detectives for the car crashes, right? This is a DEA agent. So that I'm sure was also reported back to Bubba and Rosie too.
Was charged for drug possession and possessing criminal tools. So it does make sense that maybe a DEA agent is involved. But I think all of these elements, Paul reiterates to Rosie and Bubba, and they said that they were freaked out. They said that they thought this was a drug investigation.
Rosie and Bubba thought this is a drug investigation.
Yes. So I think the way that they framed it or said to our researchers is what Paul told them about his interview. They started all feeling very freaked out that they're investigating not the accident, but drugs and like
like drug trafficking.
yeah. So like they said that they were feeling hesitant. Listen, I don't know. This is what they're saying. Now, Paul tells them that the cops had even like printed out text messages between Rosie and Mackenzie, where Rosie that night is like asking to buy weed and shrooms. So I think that freaks Rosie out because she states, yeah, that freaked her out. Rosie says, so I told my dad. My dad's a cop, ex-retired chief or whatever, which they always feel the need to bring up. So she's like saying, people always bring this up as if like
I do think it's relevant that her father's an ex-retired police chief. I do. I really do.
part of a cover up. She says, but really it has no play in this besides me being like, well, they're asking about guns and drugs and I don't know anything about that. So she's saying that Paul tells her what happened. She goes,
okay, so if they're asking about guns and drugs and you don't know anything about that, then what is the problem? What could they possibly try and pin on you? Because she says, you know, they try crazy things with teens when they go in without their parents. What are they going to try if you don't know anything about the guns and the drugs? Like, you know, we're trying to get justice for two of your friends. And we're also trying to make sure that Mackenzie gets charged appropriately. So, you know, could something get lessened after she was arrested? Like, could, you know, the judge have decided like, yeah, you know what, like after hearing from Rosie and Nina, I just don't know, you know, we'll never know because that didn't happen. They decided to, you know, act weird and be like, you know, they have the DEA involved. What the heck?
her dad and is like, I don't know. They're like asking about guns and drugs and I don't know anything about guns and drugs. She says her dad speaks with their attorney and the attorney tells them not to talk. Obviously, there's limits to what I can.
It's understandable, obviously, that the attorney is going to be hesitant. But is it, you know, what did you end up telling the attorney where they were like, oh, yeah, no, don't say anything? I don't know. Again, I don't want to ever come across as like, you should go down there and speak with police. Like, because you obviously do need a lawyer. It's a tough situation to be in. And if I don't know, you guys share what you're thinking, please. Because I still go back to Rosie and Bubba being so annoyed with how everyone comes at them about things. But it's also like, but you realize it's because we're under the impression that you tried to like literally skip town and go off to college and move on with your life. It's just, if we're holding the behavior that Mackenzie displayed after the crash as odd and wrong, which, you know, I'm not saying it's not, but I'm also saying we have to hold the same standard for Rosie and Bubba with their actions and behavior too. It's because y'all are shady. Yeah, is that why you're so afraid? And also, remember this, in Bubba's police interview that we went through last week, he said something at the end about, I'll talk to Rosie about coming in. It's just she has anxiety. Yeah, some of the stuff that Rosie was saying, like in her interview with Netflix, I was like, this sounds so much like NK. Like, I just don't believe it. There's something in my gut that is telling me you're lying. And a lot of people have the same gut instincts. So why? So we're all wrong?
Verify about any of the things anybody anywhere is saying, but one thing I could verify from this was that in the police document, it reads that Rosie's dad leaves a voicemail after Paul's interview, canceling his daughter's interview. He doesn't really state a reason. I think at some point they state like mental health, but it is after Paul's interview. So they did
the
have.
timeline checks out.
Yeah.
So the ex-retired police chief, Rosie's father, calls and cancels and says mental health problems, which is what Landon Bubba was saying, like, oh, her anxiety. But why? You also just told Rotten Mango that they're asking about drugs and guns and you know nothing about it. So where is this anxiety? And mind you, they were super nice to Paul. They were super nice to Bubba. Obviously, they're nice to Dom's family in those interviews because they're the victims. But like, nobody had this interview where they were like gone after like aggressively, you know? And why don't we have any of these interviews like on camera? I also find that kind of strange. They're all audio.
Yes, but I don't know if that's why they canceled the interview, right? This is what they told me or told our researchers is why, but I can't verify. But the timeline does check out. Now, Paul notes something interesting in his interview that when he visited Mackenzie at the hospital after the crash, Natalie Shirilla, Mackenzie's mom, told them not to talk to the cops.
So what if he had keys, guns? So what? Unless Rosie's selling Dom's guns and drugs, what's the problem? Nothing. What makes sense is Rosie and Bubba went to the car and they were scared. Well, yeah, I mean, if they took items as well, that's a problem. So this whole we're missing things of Dom's that shouldn't be missing. We want to know where they went. Rosie admits that she drove by the crash site. Like, did you stop? You know what I mean? Like, these things matter in the whole story of like the truth and justice for the victims. So I don't know. We got a lot of questions. We're not only questioning Bubba and Rosie, we're questioning if they even proved Mackenzie's intent. Or would this have just been vehicular manslaughter or, something lesser? This investigation's very odd, especially when you go through like the paperwork, which we'll all get to. There's a lot to go through, and we do this every Friday night.
Really told Paul.
Yeah.
And everybody.
Yeah. But he is relaying this to the police.
Okay.
Right. So I think that's, I don't know. Right. So I guess people can interpret that in multiple different ways. But Paul states that he talked to Rosie about all of this. So he's like telling the police, like, yeah, I've talked to Rosie about all of this. And he states that Rosie is his best friend. And Paul states to the officers that Rosie does want to talk to them.
How close are you with Rosie? Your best friend?
Have you talked to Rosie about this? Obviously you have.
Yeah.
What's Rosie's take on it? Did Rosie tell you not to talk to us?
No, Rosie wants to talk to you guys also.
Okay.
So like in his interview,
I don't believe that.
before he gets freaked out, like he's mentioning, oh yeah, like Rosie's my best friend. Yeah, she wants to talk to you guys because he knows that she has an interview lined up.
Yeah. I see.
Right.
But after Paul's interview, everything changed.
Yes.
Okay.
So Rosie and Bubba state that they start hearing from others that this is a drug investigation, that since Mackenzie was technically going to bring them shrooms, whether it be through Dom or someone else, right? There's like a sale of drugs that is going to happen, obviously evidenced by the text messages between Rosie and Mackenzie. They state it seemed like they were trying to like crack down a whole network of people who were purchasing. So that's why they were hesitant to talk to the police, is what they told our researchers. Rosie says in the Netflix documentary,
that's what she said about the drug
investigation. Yes. So our researchers were asking like, but that's like really weird because it was just like, you sounded really out of left field in the Netflix talk being like, they're not looking into the accident, they're looking into the next drug dealer. It was just like very strong of an opinion.
Oh, so that's what she meant.
Rosie says, yeah, basically. Yeah. She says that there was a lot more context to that. She told our researchers, quote, when we were filming, they sat me down and asked me in my 8-hour-long interview, one of the questions was, so what was Dom's job? And I kind of looked at them kind of weird because they know what his job was. And I was like, I don't want to say that on camera for everybody, for the whole world. And they literally said to me, oh, the viewers are already going to know in the audience. Like they're going to know that he was sometimes, maybe, perhaps allegedly, you know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even want to say
Okay, we have to call it for what it is. He was selling drugs. I mean, we have to be honest. We have to take our emotions and feelings out of our research and call it for what it is. And people who are close to him have all agreed and stated as such. Bubba, however, tried not to talk about that and state that in his police interview. So he left that information out.
drug dealer. I mean, I guess legally, I don't know, right? But it seems like you're like,
right. So
yeah. Okay. So she says that is what accounts for why my response got simplified down. It seems like they were trying to find the next big drug dealer. So she's saying she was under the impression the Netflix doc would include lots of this. So it didn't look like they were trying to investigate the accident. It looked like they were trying to find the next big drug dealer. She thought there would be a lot of context.
Right.
But instead, there was kind of none.
It was out of context.
I do want to clarify something. I think whatever Don was doing is completely irrelevant to this entire case. It played no role in the crash. It played no role in the fact that his life was taken at 20 years old. And the only definitive part that really matters in the context of the crash and drugs is that drugs were found on Mackenzie's person. When she was pulled out of the vehicle, they found a whole bag of shrooms on her person. Now, Rosie and Bubba are saying that they were under the impression, like I said, that this is a drug investigation. That's what they're telling us. The police document also notes that the detective did reach out to Bubba's college football coach to try to get Bubba to come in for questions after all of them canceled their interviews. So it does seem like
what about Nina?
Nina's not really they don't really care about Nina.
She didn't.
Like, don't you guys think that that's a problem that Nina just slips between the cracks? And again, I'm not saying like track her down, and No. And I don't want you guys to do that about Bubba and Rosie either, which I don't think my viewers would do that. But I'm sorry, but some of the evidence, quote unquote evidence, that they're using against Mackenzie is hearsay through the grapevine of people. So if we're going off of hearsay to convict her, which again, I'm not saying she's innocent. You guys know how I feel. She's where she needs to be right now. But I'm just wondering, like, why wasn't Nina like ever somebody that they really tried to like speak with? And I guess she canceled her interview after Paul said like this isn't good. It's just kind of like, it's interesting that she's never even come out on any platform, or, you know, like obviously she wants to move on with her life, but I'm sorry, but there's a lot of mystery in what took place at Paul's house that night. And Nina is vital in that. And unfortunately, we can't even go by her hearsay, even if we decided not to believe it. You know, so it's lacking, in my opinion. This investigation is lacking, but the charges are very heavy for a 17-year-old. For such little, like, so finally I finally get like we're talking about like the lack of and this stuff, like going through this stuff, it's like, wow, yeah, like we're really only going off of stuff that we've heard through people.
Do the interview?
No, yeah.
Oh, what? That's weird. She was there.
She was, but I think she like barely knew. So I think Nina is Rosie's friend. Rosie and Mackenzie were the connection, and then Davion and Bubba were the connection. Now, Bubba says the Netflix documentary, I think that from their original idea, the documentary involved too much, I guess, the drug talk in a sense, and I could see it respectfully why the families wouldn't want that out there, but I guess that was their initial direction with this case or with this documentary. And then somewhere down the line, edit changes had to be made or whatnot, and it went a completely different direction. So Bubba is saying like he agrees with Rosie that he was under the impression that this Netflix documentary was going to talk extensively about drugs, the drug investigation, the alleged drug investigation, and all these things.
Oh, so in the doc, it wasn't talked about.
Barely, just like they were gonna maybe trip.
So everything you just said was not discussed.
Yeah. So they share other stories of why they thought it was a drug investigation. And again, you either believe them or you don't. It's entirely up to you. I actually have no stance on this matter, as I do think it's still kind of irrelevant to the crash itself. But because the internet has been wanting to know why they didn't talk to the police, I guess this is their reasoning. So they state, Bubba says that the police were coming to his college to essentially ask about drugs. Again, furthering his belief, he states that the police were not interested about the night in question, that they were not interested in the car crash, that they were interested in figuring out some sort of nefarious drug network that he, you know, it doesn't really exist. So he says, quote, after practice, it's the 7th game of the season. They called me up to the coach's office, which is at the top of the Don Drum Stadium. I go up there and they're like, so we've been getting reports. The dean of the college is getting reports that you're involved in a drug trafficking case back at home. And that if you become a suspect and not a victim, we couldn't have that image on the team. Bubba says, I was flabbergasted from that. I was like, drug trafficking? I'm like, what the hell is going on? Because even at this point, anytime the police reached out to me, they would come to my dorm and it was never about drugs. It was always about like, are you being intimidated not to talk to us? Is someone intimidating you not to talk to us about that night? Again, this is one of those things where I could not verify.
If the school is telling him drug trafficking case involving you, they must gotten that from someone, from the police, right?
Yes, but I can't verify that the school did say that to him. The only thing that I could verify is that the detective did reach out to his football coach.
Let's say if that is true, then what does that mean then? That means potentially there could be investigating for something more?
I think it could have been a dual investigation. I think they could have been running a homicide investigation, and then the DA agent is in the line of questioning for a lot of these interviews because he could also be running his own investigation into maybe like a high school network of transfer of weed and illicit substances. So I could not verify that conversation, but like I said, I do know that there is mention in police reports that the detectives were reaching out to Bubba's football coach, and it seems like they were repeatedly going to Bubba's college, and that is kind of noted. It did seem like they were trying to apply pressure to get him to talk, which isn't necessarily always a bad thing on the police's part, but that's just what I could verify. And as for the two officers talking about how Bubba told them, who's going to intimidate me? I'm big dog, right? That wasn't one of our questions, actually. Like that was not one of my questions. That was not one of our researchers' questions, but it did come up naturally. And Bubba states, I simply told him like I wasn't being intimidated. And he's like, I'm like, no, bro, I'm like 6'2". Like I'm not gonna.
But also remember, Bubba said when they went to the hospital to visit Mackenzie, Steve Shirilla like looked at him and he was like, please help me save my daughter. So I feel like Bubba's not really understanding like this whole talk of like being intimidated or like swayed a certain way, like to make statements or to not make statements with police, or I don't know. I just, there's things that he's stated that have like contradicted that, you know, and the way, I don't believe much of Bubba and Rosie, but I'm open to her being overcharged and this being like reckless, something to do with reckless vehicular homicide or something like that, reckless driving or something like that.
Gonna be intimidated. No one's threatening me like to not talk to the police. I think I said something along the lines of like, I'm big dog at home. Like he says it wasn't meant in any way. It was more of
like, I think he's taking the literal, like, were you intimidated? Like, he's taking it too literal.
just like I'm the second biggest kid in our high school. The first one just went to the Detroit Lions this year in the draft. I was the second biggest in the school after him. So he was explaining to our researchers, like when he said I'm big dog, he wasn't trying to be like, I'm top dog, I'm the shit, like no one messes with me. He was like, it seemed more like he was trying to say like,
he's like, I'm
like a fucking big dude. Like I don't think, and he's trying to express to them he's not being intimidated. But again, again, this is not information I can verify. He says he eventually chose to talk to the police because he was reassured it was not a drug trafficking case.
So at what point did you say it was October?
Yeah, around October.
I see.
So the line of questioning would be about the crash. So that's when he goes in and he sits with the interview or the police. Now, regardless, Rosie and Bubba state that they both spoke with the authorities. Rosie with the prosecutor, Bubba with the detective. And they state that their whole hesitancy came from the fact, not because they were trying to help Mackenzie.
Yes, thank you. Negligent homicide.
Not because they were trying to cover up anything from that night, but because they state they believe that the police were investigating drug trafficking. Yeah, and Rosie states that she even received a phone call from a DEA agent after Mackenzie's arrest stating, I heard you're involved in a drug investigation from 2022. I couldn't verify that, obviously, and since we had Rosie and Bubba on the line, we just wanted to ask them all the questions that kept circulating on TikTok. I'm just going to tell you pretty much verbatim what they said.
And if this is all true about like the DEA calling her, I'm wondering if their approach for this wasn't like very good, like why scare them? And we've seen so many like tactics by law enforcement in these cases that we study, and normally it's like they act super nice just to get you to talk to them. So I'm confused why there's like this aggression. I don't know, maybe they were just taken back by the lack of cooperation.
I'm going to try to take out as much of the rambling for clarity's sake. These were their responses. And of course, they are going to advocate for themselves. So we did try to fact check as much as we could through the police reports. But like I said, when it's unverifiable, I'm just going to state that outright. About their friendship dynamic, they state that they have been hanging out with Davion for years, since Bubba and Davion played high school football together. As for Mackenzie, Rosie just started hanging out with her and Dom. Quote, just a few months prior to the accident, we just randomly started hanging out every day, back to back. Next day, she would call me, like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
I also don't believe Rosie's like, we met on social media. Like it's very well could be true, but the stuff that Mackenzie was posting on social media, like her with weed and smoking all the time, and like Rosie's own words saying like we were the stoners. It's like, so you hung out with her just because you guys commented on each other's social media. It had nothing to do with the fact that her boyfriend was dealing weed and you're a stoner. Like it's just very like, come on, Rosie, we're not stupid. That's how you got connected with Mackenzie.
And what are we going to do? And so that's, why I feel like I can speak from a point of like, a lot of people want to say there's crazy internet speculation. And a lot of people say, how could you not know their relationship was so toxic? But personally, we just didn't really see that side of them. I mean, as I said, we only started hanging out with them in the months prior. So she's saying like, I'm not like, I didn't know them for years. And that was another thing online. A lot of people were saying things along the lines of, well, I mean, we are all bashing Rosie, but at least she's a ride or die best friend to Mackenzie.
And think about that too. Like she didn't know them that long. So that makes it even more like you kind of understand why she didn't want to cooperate. Like she didn't care. She didn't care if Mackenzie got overcharged by her not cooperating. She didn't care what type of justice and level of justice the victims got because she just started hanging out with these people. Like she's worried about herself for whatever reason.
And we would all probably want a ride or die best friend. Rosie states that she actually is just like a recent friend with Mackenzie. She states that while they did hang out every day for a few months because they had gotten to know each other a few months before the crash, she states it's not like they're best friends. She states that she already has her best friends. She has her really close friend group, and Mackenzie is new to the friend group. She states that she does not feel the need to cover up for her or anything. Rosie states that it just wouldn't make sense for her to lie and stand by Mackenzie because they're not really best friends like that. Rosie states it seems like the internet is all accusing her of covering up for Mackenzie, but she states that she doesn't have a reason to cover up for Mackenzie because they're not even best friends. Now, in the FOIA file, I mean, I tried my best to verify. There is a little over 600 pages of text messages between Mackenzie and Rosie. We did read through all of it just to figure out what kind of friendship it was. It was kind of a bizarre friendship. So, for example, July 6, 2022, Mackenzie texts Rosie, "Do you like matcha?" Rosie responds, "My mom's being really annoying and I have to go shopping with her to get food. I asked her for food money and she started arguing with me." Mackenzie responds, "Oh, damn, come next time." And also, like, you post yourself in a bikini and like show your butt. But like, if I did that, my whole TikTok would be getting fucking banned. I'm so jealous. Yeah, I need to get money, bruh. I don't even know what I'm going to do to get famous. Oh my God. I don't know why they do that to certain people. Dude, we're perfect duo to be famous. This is 25 days before the crash.
So, you know, this whole conversation that they just displayed, like, there was a text message between Rosie and Mackenzie where she's talking about a brand that she tagged on Instagram and how the brand liked her post. And they literally were like, "Oh my gosh, we're famous," or "We're going to be famous." Like, I feel like those, when people are like, "Look at the text messages," like when we're discussing her intent, Mackenzie's intent, there's a lot of like talk of her like wanting to be famous and stuff, like to a point where it's like, would she unalive herself in the car? Again, that's statistically, especially for women, that's not the way that they do that. Statistically, you can look it up. Usually it has something to do with a rope. And I'm not going to get into graphic detail because YouTube doesn't like it. But like, those are the main ways that women kind of decide to self-delete. So she thought she was going to be famous. Like, she's so self-absorbed. She's so narcissistic. Like, all her friends in the documentary were like, "I don't know. I don't believe that she would do that." It's made me question things for sure. Like, when we're talking about her intent, we're not talking about her guilt. But I do think that like her saying all the time, like, "I'm going to be famous," like that kind of works against this whole theory that she would self-delete, because it's like she literally thought she was going to be famous. So why would she just give up? Again, I'm playing devil's advocate because that's what we do when we iron out things like that. You could argue that she was at peak life. Yeah.
Rosie tries to sympathize with Mackenzie about her TikTok that keeps getting banned. They banned like 3 of your accounts, I feel like, and explains that Mackenzie's freaking out. Like, Mackenzie will, "My name is Mackenzie Shirilla. I'm a petite model from Cleveland, Ohio. I love to express my personality through fashion and photography. One of my goals on social media is to help people be themselves and embrace the style they love. I'm extremely body inclusive. I would love for brands to be more inclusive to the smaller sizes as well as the larger sizes. I'm extremely big on healthy living, clean brands, organic food." And then Mackenzie will just like suddenly text Rosie, "Do you know you can order animal shit anonymously to people's houses?" Like, when I say animal, I'm talking like elephant shit, like that. Or
okay, I'm going to fast forward some of these text messages because we're going to go through our own deep dives of them. And these aren't like anything to do with the recent statements that Rosie and Bubba made with the channel.
That she's not under 14. Rosie writes, "Okay, when you're not, I love TikTok." Mackenzie never really got more than a few thousand, so her attitude towards Rosie seems vastly different from how she treats other people that she doesn't really want anything from. I mean, like, you saw the way that she was texting people and DMing people and just being a brat. She doesn't seem to show that side to Rosie, so I was kind of surprised by that in the 600 pages. I was just trying to figure out the depth of their friendship, and it seems like they just like share weird ideas back and forth. Mackenzie will text Rosie, "You should make a TikTok vlog of you tripping." Okay, this one I thought was a little weird.
What? Why?
Yeah, because exactly. Mackenzie has been complaining about how TikTok has been banning her account nonstop, and then all of a sudden she's like, "You should make a TikTok vlog of you tripping," which is, I'm like,
Why?
"Are you trying to sabotage?" Like, it was weird. Not that I'm like defending anyone, but like, it's just like a weird.
What kind of suggestion is it?
Yeah, which feels sabotagey to me, but I don't know. And then she hits it with an LOL, to which Rosie responds, LMFAO, "I want you so bad, but my mom has TikTok and I blocked her, but her weird ass would make another account. SMH, I wish I could post shit like that too. My mom follows me too." And just some like random
Yeah, trust me, there's no substance or important info in her conversations with Rosie. It's all like, you know, "I'm going to wear this. And oh my God, that looks so good on you."
Mackenzie texts Rosie.
But the night of, when they're discussing the shrooms, that then Rosie decides to say like, "No, they got there too late and we didn't use them." It's like, that kind of goes against your text messages though. It seems like you guys were ready to eat those shrooms.
That's what I'm saying. The pictures are going to be fire. I don't care. Yesterday, your baby videos are all over my FYP.
The pictures are going to be fire. No way. Same with you, to be honest. Your videos are all over FYP. I need to hit 100K. Oh my God, work. We're famous. Ugh. Ew, not eggs to eat. I hate eggs. Blah, 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 blah.
Was when Mackenzie was like, you should make a vlog of yourself tripping. It felt a little sabotagey. After all of her rants about getting banned on TikTok for doing nothing. And then she's like, hey, violate community guidelines right now. It was just kind of, it was weird. Okay.
And you think that's why Rosie responds, describes Mackenzie in that way, is because of that's kind of the friendship she has with?
Yes, I think it would be understandable to see where Rosie is coming from and how she describes her relationship with Mackenzie and how she specifically felt about Mackenzie. I think the part that people might have problems with for sure is the fact that you didn't know her that long and you had more of a surface level friendship. And yet it does seem like she has a lot of hope and faith in Mackenzie's that this was an accident. Like they don't 100% think it's an accident, at least from what they told our researchers, in the sense of like they're dead set, like this was an accident. They're not like Mackenzie and Mackenzie's parents. They are more so, they stayed on the side of, yeah, I think it's completely understandable for Rosie to speak on her friendship with Mackenzie. And it does seem like Mackenzie was a very nice friend to Rosie to some degree, at least in the 600-page text message thread. But I think where people have a problem is when she uses this shorter friendship to kind of
like a character judgment.
Yes, exactly. So I think
because you don't know Mackenzie well enough to,
and just because she was nice to you for 5-6 months doesn't mean that you can really wholeheartedly 10 toes down talk about her character.
And plus, when your entire relationship is surrounded by you guys taking shrooms or smoking weed together, like, yeah, she's probably going to seem like a really chill, nice girl. You know what I mean? Like, it's not enough time. Sometimes, I don't know, in my friendships with other girls, like everything is good, but it takes a while before like you see the other girl specifically. I'm not talking about guys for who they are. Like, I don't know. They sneak under the radar much longer than guys do, in my opinion. So I think Rosie has rose-colored glasses on about Mackenzie, no pun intended.
I think is what people are feeling and saying. I think that's why, there's like kind of a weird argument of people are saying like, would it be better if they were best friends forever? Because then it's like, you can kind of understand. It's like, maybe you grew up.
Again, I noticed that too. Like her pictures on her Instagram and her YouTube, and then versus the Netflix, I was like, I feel catfished.
Together and you're like, so this is your only friend? I don't know.
But I wonder if it's like long-term friend, like then you can really see the pattern of someone. You're like, yeah, I can see her doing that because she's crazy. Like,
but then if you just know someone for like a really be a character, like unbanning her response. They rant about their boyfriends together. Rosie will text Mackenzie about Bubba, her boyfriend. We're fighting. This motherfucker is so annoying. Like, why am I even with him? Mackenzie's like, what'd he do? Oh.
And isn't that interesting? Like, this is the way Rosie spoke about Bubba then. And she's still with him. So I still go back to like, are they together because they have a secret in common? And people, I could be sounding too harsh, but
we're still coming. But he's always.
I haven't watched the rest of this, so I don't know if there's more about her discussion that she had with Rosie and Bubba. Okay, wait, hold on.
Also just rants about everyone, generally speaking. She even sends Rosie this audio message where she says, quote, I'm just going to send you this voice memo because it's easier.
I'm just going to send you a voice memo because it's easier. But so the second party we went to on the 4th, fucking it was like Strongsville popular people. I don't even know. It was open invite, this big ass mansion. That's why I was like, you guys need to come because somebody was asking about Bubba. And then I was like, oh, I invited Rosie and them, but I don't know what they're going to do. Fucking Haley, DePompe, and Megan and all of them were there.
And all of them were there. Haley came up to me like, right now, driving 20 tells it wasn't daily arguments. It wasn't like anything crazy like that. Rosie states to our researchers, it's so weird because now I'm just seeing people online making fun of me for saying, oh, we had the best friend group, but it really was like a really chill vibe. And up until even that night, we were doing the stuff that we would normally do, watching TV, watching movies, going outside, just talking, listening to music. It's like a lost art form and nobody even does that anymore. And it was like, we would do these wholesome things and it just feels like a lot of the toxic relationship drama is kind of sweeping that up. Like we somehow were involved in any of that or saw it and genuinely never saw anything like that. And if we ever did hear anybody threaten anybody or if they were arguing that night or if they were arguing about anything, we would be the first people to say that. I would not sit here and defend something or just lie about what now is a double homicide or about.
But the thing is, hi, boss lady, 27 months membership. So glad you're here. Thank you so much. again, Rosie, like, the internet isn't dragging you because we think you guys sat by and let a toxic relationship play out in front of you and did nothing to help. We're dragging you guys and questioning you guys because it seems as though you were very avoidant in getting justice for Dom and Davion. And we want to know why. And you admitted to driving by the scene that day. And we have things of Dom's that are very expensive. You know, the cash. We know that there was cash and that nothing has been accounted for. So, you know, it's interesting that she gathers that they stood by a toxic relationship and like didn't speak up. Like that's not what it is. So hold on, let's hear that again.
And if we ever did hear anybody threaten anybody, or if they were arguing that night, or if they were arguing about anything, we would be the first people to say that. I would not sit here and defend something or just lie about what now is a double homicide or about my friends losing their lives in general.
Does Rosie know the depth, the truth of, how Mackenzie's relationship actually is with Don? All the texts and all of that you've shared so far, or you don't know that information?
So Rosie does mention the text messages in the 2-hour-long conversation, but it was more of the sense of she is stating like she told the prosecutor what she saw that night. And she is telling people that she did not see them argue extensively. Like she did not see them have a toxic relationship. She's saying two things can be true though. She's saying like, obviously I didn't see those text messages. Like she's saying like, obviously I don't have their phones.
Oh, so she's saying that she actually doesn't know they have a toxic relationship.
Or, okay, her thing is more so people are trying to break down why she's telling people that she did not witness a toxic relationship. But Rosie is saying, but I'm only speaking on what I witnessed when I was around them, which was they did not have a toxic relationship, she states. But then she also acknowledges, because like I'm not seeing their text messages when it's happening. So, people are asking her in that time frame that you knew Mackenzie and Dom, did they have a toxic relationship? She's saying no, because she's like, I didn't witness any toxic relationship. And then she's also saying, but also I don't like have their text messages. Like I can't like go through her phone. She's like saying like,
so she's basically saying she never saw it. She didn't know about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think her frustration, it seems, because she was expressing it to the researchers, is like she is trying to tell people. People are asking her, what did you witness? She's saying, I'm telling you what I witnessed. And they're like, no, because we saw the text messages. And then she's saying, well, I didn't see the text messages at the time that you're asking me.
Yeah. I mean,
that's what she's saying.
Yeah. So all the all the videos we've seen of Rosie talking about is she didn't know.
Yes.
Basically what.
But I don't know how she stands. I don't know if she's standing. I don't know how much of the text messages she's seen now. I don't know if she thinks that they had a toxic relationship or if this is a normal toxic relationship for high schoolers in her mind. I don't know. Rosie states that the only nice responses that she really receives now after the Netflix documentary is like, okay, well, I guess you're a good friend though for keeping her secrets and defending her because you love her so much.
It does seem like she has this loyalty to Mackenzie. And again, is it just you being a good friend? But also it's like, if you had no knowledge about the drugs and guns that they were going to ask you about, like, why was there anxiety for you to speak to law enforcement? Like, I don't know. Could it have changed the course of the investigation? We'll never know. And when I say that, it's like, we don't think that Mackenzie is innocent. But did she get overcharged? Was she, was there more stuff that Rosie could add to the story that would make this all make more sense? Because the whole theory that like she wanted to self-delete and stuff, like at first I was for it and like, yeah, on board with it, which I still leave it up on the board of possibilities, but it doesn't make sense really, especially with Davion in the car.
And Rosie states that she is not doing that. She says, literally the whole online response is every single person just thinks I'm lying or covering up something for her. And I would never, ever cover up a murder. That is insane.
So what made people think she's covering for Mackenzie again? Is it
the hesitancy to talk to the police? Oh, okay. And it does seem that Rosie does not think that Mackenzie did this intentionally.
It's more than just her hesitancy to talk to police. It's the timeline of when she did talk to not even law enforcement, the prosecutor. It was after the arrest. And then her coming out to talk to Netflix was after the conviction. So she'll make public statements, but, as long as the person's locked away for this crime, you know what I mean? That's what's also alarming, in addition to, you kind of seeming like you didn't want to cooperate at all.
And I think that makes people question Rosie because a lot of people have seen the FOIA file. A lot of people have heard from Dom's family members. They just don't see why Rosie could say that having such a shorter friendship with Mackenzie. And then I guess people are also confused because they're like, okay, well, Rosie and Bubba were closer to Dom. So people who support and don't support Mackenzie are going to have different opinions about this. The argument is that Rosie and Bubba were closer to Davion. And the fact that like Mackenzie supporters will say, see, that's because like they see what they see, which is they think is the truth. They're like, because, you know, they have no allegiance to Mackenzie, but they still kind of support Mackenzie to some degree because they think the evidence is weird. But then people who don't like them are like, what the fuck? I will say that there are like 2 points in the text messages where Mackenzie complains about her relationship with Dom. But from judging by Rosie's responses, again, none of them are kind of taken seriously. Rosie does say that they had conversations in person, but I don't know. It's just like there's not a lot of depth. So I can see maybe why she's saying that she didn't see it at that time. I don't know.
And it does sound like Mackenzie take everything twisted to her side and tells it like this is what happened versus what really happened.
Of course. And Mackenzie is also kind of fickle. So like there will be one time where she's texting Rosie about how she got into a huge fight with Dom and she's like ranting about Dom, but it's like very vague. It's like, oh, he's so dumb. Like he's so blah, 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 blah. And then Rosie's like, oh no. And then Mackenzie will text, you want to come to Dom's? If you want, we can take dabs. Which like, why would anyone want to go there if they're fighting? So Rosie is like, LMAO, it's okay. You don't want to come? Should I? Yeah, you can come. Okay. He lied to me, so I'm gonna smoke all his dabs. So then Rosie is like, haha, period. So it's like very, like, it doesn't, But again, the main reason we wanted to talk to Rosie and Bubba is to ask them what happened that night. I mean, there's no way that you can definitively know the truth, but there were 2 people that were there, and this is what they've had to say about that night in question. They state that Mackenzie and Dom were not fighting that night at Paul's, and they state it's frustrating that the documentary painted it as if Rosie and Bubba were the only 2 others at the party or the gathering, but they're saying there's 2 other people, Paul and Nina. So I guess they're expressing to our researchers, like, what would all 4 of us gain out of like lying about them not fighting that night? They're like, it doesn't like make sense why people are like, no, they definitely fought that night. Like they're confused why nobody believes them when they say there was no fighting that night. Bubba says
because there were statements made at first, which could be corroborated by police interviews and police notes, that there was talks of a confrontation that night. So I don't know why they're all it's like they're doubling down, like, yeah, we're so confused, like why we all say that there was no fight, but they don't want to believe it. It's like, well, we heard otherwise actually too. And then everything changed. And now we know that you and Paul are so close. And obviously he's protecting Rosie. Paul, I mean.
he was awake with the guys most of the night. Like they were all on the couch. So it was Bubba, Davion, Dom, and Mackenzie. And they were just like watching TV. Mackenzie was falling asleep. He says that, there was one thing that he mentioned, which is like right when Mackenzie, Davion, and Dom arrived to Paul's house, within a little bit, Mackenzie and Dom leave briefly. So they go back to Dom's house. And Bubba says they were gone for like 15, 30 minutes because, quote, they all ate healthy, like they ate non-GMO. So they would always have like special snacks. And they ended up having to go back home like 10 minutes after they got there to grab their snacks, to grab popcorn and to grab, I think it was like blueberries or some shit. That's what he says. But then they ended up going back to grab those separately. So they leave Davion.
Yeah.
And they went in the car. And when they came back, it was still perfectly fine. So he was like, yeah, they were gone for 15 minutes, but he doesn't think that they were fighting in that time.
This is the first where, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I swear, this is the first we're hearing Bubba say that they left at one point to go get snacks. Do you guys remember him? So we've gone over his, and they ended up having to go back home like 10 minutes after they got there to get their snacks, to get popcorn and grab, I think it was like blueberries or some shit. Were they using that food to eat their mushrooms with? Because some people are particular, I don't know, mostly people put it in like a PBJ sandwich. I've heard that never mind.
10 minutes after they got there to grab their snacks, to grab popcorn and to grab, I think it was like blueberries or some shit. That's what he says. But then they ended up going back to grab those separately. So they leave Davion.
Yeah.
And they went in the car, and when they came back, it was still perfectly fine. So he was like, yeah, they were gone for 15 minutes, but he doesn't think that they were fighting in that time because it didn't seem like they came back tense. Like it seems like they were in a happy mood when they got back. But I guess his thing was, if Mackenzie had planned to kill Dom, why wouldn't she have done it on that drive? I guess is
Okay. Thank you, Neat Noodle.
Maybe the insinuation, because he's like, that's a whole thing that's completely left out about that night. But again, like I said, a lot of netizens don't think it was like pre-planned days in advance. It was more so like maybe an argument broke out in the car on the way home. Maybe an argument did not break out when they went to go grab snacks.
Mm-hmm.
So the next morning, they wake up, Mackenzie wakes up. A lot of the others hadn't gone to sleep. Bubba and Davion have plans. Bubba says Davion was going to help him, quote, paint the bottom of my truck and paint it black and get all the rust off and everything. And we were going to do that. And he was like, oh, I could just come back to your house so we could wake up and do it. And I was like, I mean, that's fine with me. And then at the last moment, so he's supposed to go home with Bubba. sleep at Bubba's, and then do it. But then at the last minute, he's like, you know what? I'm just going to go home, aka Dom's, shower, sleep, like we'll hit each other up maybe around noon. Mackenzie, Dom, and Davion get into the car. The two don't make it. A huge conversation online since the release of the documentary. And it's not necessarily what was said in the documentary, but people looking into the case. There have been conversations, like I said, from those police reports of other interviews of friends, just like hearsay, that Rosie stated to someone that she drove by the crash site that morning before the police were called. And whether she didn't see it or didn't call the police, like that's been like a huge conspiracy.
And also Bubba has come out stating that, like, yes, she did. That's how she goes home or something. So it's been confirmed she did drive past it.
Online, right? Our researchers asked Rosie, and Bubba says, look, the police have video of Mackenzie's car turning onto Progress. Okay, that turn. And if anybody else went that route, they knew anyone in the car, they would see it in camera. Like Bubba says, it's obvious from a logical.
But at the same point, like, we don't have any footage. You know, like, we don't have like a whole bunch of that footage. We just have Mackenzie's car. So if they're trying to use the argument, like, you would have seen Rosie, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, I mean, we don't really have much of the footage. You know, like, you always have to kind of question, like, the lack of transparency with that, you know, whereas other body cam and other CCTV footage, when you do a FOIA request, they'll give you like the whole file that they gathered and they went through, and then they found like the specific evidence in it. Like, we only have the minute marks of Mackenzie's car. So there's just like a lack of transparency even in the CCTV footage. And I feel like there should have been way more of cameras on that road anyways.
Standpoint that this is not true, and somehow the media is running with it. So we kept pressing them on it because we're just like, well, we just want to know where this is coming from. And they state that there's a supposed friend who had gone to the police and said that Rosie was super emotional and had made a comment about how she drove past them that morning on her way home from Paul's. So she also left Paul's, drove by the crash site, and like that's also making her even more emotional now that, you know, she knows they're dead. So they're explaining like, okay, basically, and this is verified through the police interview, there's someone who went to the police and was like, you know, Rosie was mentioning how she was so emotional because she also left Paul's that morning and drove by the crash site on her way home. So like, it's kind of up in the air what that means, but a lot of people on the internet took it with she drove by the crash site. Like she's.
And here's the thing, like, if they're going to be like, oh yeah, you know, that somebody just said that. It's like, well, yeah, but people also said things about Mackenzie too that we're supposed to just take as truth. So I don't know.
Saw the car or could have seen the car. Maybe she didn't look out the window, but drove by that exact road where the car was crashed into the building. That's how everyone's taking it. And of course, a lot of people are spinning it in the more nefarious way and saying like, she drove by, saw Mackenzie's car and was like, holy shit, Mackenzie actually went through with it. So she doesn't call the cops and she just keeps driving home. And then because maybe she feels guilt, maybe she feels all these emotions, she meant.
See, I don't think that's it. I don't think that like she was like, oh wow, she actually went through with it. So she doesn't call the cops and she goes home. I feel like it's not that. I don't know.
Mentions it at like one of the vigils and it becomes the whole thing. It gets reported to the police. So we're like, we just need to know, where were you? Like, where was it? They pretty much like got a Google Maps explanation, gave it to the researchers. They're like, we live here. This is where Bubba lives. This is where Rosie lives. Like they were giving the full breakdown of the entire town. Now, if we deduce the main points, Rosie had gotten up. So Rosie had slept. So she gets up and she's like gathering her stuff. She had gotten up to use the restroom. She's
Hold on. I got to hear this.
Gathering her coloring books. And eventually her and Bubba are like, let's go. Like, we want to sleep in the bed. Like, let's go to Bubba's house. And they said that they were.
Okay, so where is it in this recap of events from Rosie where Dom walks into the kitchen at 5 a.m. and you say to him, you guys are leaving? Because that's what she told Netflix. Is that going to be said in this whole little recap here? Because stories should stay the same.
Her and Bubba are like, let's go. Like, we want to sleep in the bed. Like, let's go to Bubba's house. And they said that they were going to go to Bubba's and they were going to both sleep and wake up later around noon. Because remember, Davion was like, oh yeah, I'm going to come help you with your car around noon.
Yep.
So they both drove separately to Paul's. Bubba gets in his car and Rosie gets in her car. Her whole thinking was Bubba's parents are pretty strict. So they don't let her sleep over, but it's daytime. So like technically she can take naps. So like this is kind of like a nap. So then she drives to Bubba's house and she states that when she gets there, Bubba's mom has COVID. So she's like, you know what? Maybe not smart for me. So forget it. I'm just going to drive home. So she gets to Bubba's and then decides she's going to drive home. And the only.
And we're supposed to believe that in 2022, Rosie's scared to stay at a house where somebody has COVID. I mean, maybe.
Only way for her to drive home is using really the main road, which is Pearl, not Progress. Pearl. Pearl is the main road. Like, this is where all the restaurants are. This is where the Starbucks is. Apparently, there's so much traffic on Pearl, but Pearl. She passes the entrance of Progress, where Mackenzie had turned right. She passes the entrance. She does not go on to Progress ever.
This is if you believe her. Again, we don't have to play devil's advocate, we don't have the footage from that whole morning. Okay? We've only got the footage that they've wanted us to see. So she's telling people she drove past the crash site, and now all of a sudden they're saying, no, this is where I actually drove.
Got it.
That's what she says. Now she passes the entrance, and she also like is saying, if I had and I wasn't like talking to the police, she's like, I guess the argument is like the police would have known and they would have.
Yeah. That would be a crazy
Yeah,
detail.
yeah. And there's like no mention of it anywhere, right? She thinks that this rumor could have started because everyone was gathered at the crash site, like 50 or 100 people after the car was taken, and there was flowers. It was like a vigil that was set up, and a lot of the high schoolers would just kind of hang out there because it was a way to grieve together and not alone. And she says maybe somebody there heard that I drove down Pearl, and maybe it got mistranslated, and everybody there is just obviously like trying. I mean, there was just a bunch of rumors going around to everybody trying.
Okay, so again, the hearsay you hear about Rosie isn't true, but the hearsay you hear about Mackenzie is true. Got it.
To speculate on what had happened. So she states that she never specifically spoke to the person that told the police this, but she thinks maybe that's how this whole story got started. Because I can see that. I could see Rosie being emotional and like mentioning like, I was just driving down Pearl on the way home.
Yeah.
And I passed the entrance, and then it just kind of,
sense.
yeah.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah. And this is less pertinent information, but I thought it was interesting, okay? But Rosie told us that on the drive home from Bubba's, she's driving down the main road, passing the entrance of Progress, not on Progress, but passing the entrance. And she said that she was getting really emotional. So the whole theme of the night at Paul's, and technically all of this it was a graduation party, and they've been going to all these grad parties. She says, we're going to college soon. We were all locked in to go to different colleges. Me and Nina were going to a college that was like 2.5 hours away. Bubba was going to a college that was 2 hours away. So it was just kind of a lot of stress. And then Kenzie and Dom were going to college, and neither was Davion. And our friend Paul was going somewhere else. So it was just like everybody was getting separated. So the whole theme of that night for us was just like everybody was getting separated. And, you know, we're going to college kind of scared. We're going to leave home, and we're going to have to make new friends. So on my drive home, I'm literally reflecting on the fact that this city that I'm driving through, because as I said, you know, this is the main road. I have so many memories in the city. I'm passing by the carnival that we went to. I'm passing by all this stuff, and I'm literally like crying in the car.
Rosie's crying?
Yeah. That's what she says, right? I mean, this is obviously like an anecdotal story that is not relevant to the case, but she's just like was giving us a lot of context. And she says like there was this beautiful sunrise, and it felt like a warm summer morning, which that's the only thing I could fact check, which the sunrise and the time that she's driving home does check out. And she says, you know, I have all my windows down, and I'm not even playing any music. And I'm just like, wow, this city isn't so bad. And I have a nice friend group now. But then also kind of sad because now we're all going to separate colleges and have to try and find new friends in college. And she says, you know, I feel like when I was growing up, we're like, I hate the city. Everybody sucks here. Like, this place sucks. And then I finally had a moment where I was like, maybe it's not that bad. Like, maybe I'm going to miss it here. And then I got home, I went to sleep, and I got woken up by a phone call from Bubba, and he was just like bawling his eyes out, and I couldn't even understand what he was saying. She mentions how she told this all to the Netflix documentary producers, and they actually wanted to film a whole scene. So they were like planning on doing a whole, like a recreation of the sunrise moment where she's driving, right? But she says, I don't know how it all just ended up getting cut out. Side note, it seems that Bubba found out about the crash because Davion had been staying with Bubba's for a little bit, and the head football coach had called Bubba's mom asking if she had heard the news about Bubba. Bubba was waiting for Davion, so he was actually outside in the driveway prepping his truck for Davion to come and to help with the truck. So he said that he was trying to make sure the lines were straight, doing all the prep work under the truck, and then, quote, that's when my mom came out and told me, and yeah, it's just a mess after that. Ultimately, Bubba states multiple times throughout this call, Mackenzie was not my friend. And I know this might sound harsh or might come off as a bad way, but if she would have lost her life in that accident, or some like really excruciating evidence came out and she got booked for like 30 years to life and it was a harsher sentence than what she has now, it would not affect me in any way. I would not care. Mackenzie was not my friend. She was more of Rosie's friend. They always did their thing, like when we always hung out. I mean, I've had a handful of conversations with her. I was never her friend. Davion was the closest thing to a brother for me since him living with me. I owned one of his football jerseys. He got buried in the other one. He was truly the closest thing to a blood brother to me. So my whole stance on this is I just want to know the truth. The reality of it, at least for me, I don't care how long she sits in jail. I don't care about any of that. What I care about is knowing the true story of knowing how they lost their lives. Rosie has, side note about, there was a lot of, people thought that Rosie was doing the Netflix documentary for social media attention, and they do bring up her social media handles. And there's like parts where Rosie is like, oh yeah, when I met Mackenzie, I had 200,000 followers on YouTube, right? Rosie says she wanted the producers to not include any of her social media. She says that it was irrelevant to the case because it's not like they were doing videos together, and she's mainly on YouTube doing her fitness stuff, and that has nothing to do with Mackenzie. So she said that she didn't want any of it on there, but then the producers during the 8 hours were asking her what she does for work. And then they would ask her like, oh, how many followers did you have when you first met Mackenzie? And she says, but you have to understand, like, I sat down and they asked me all these things and I just answered. I wasn't being careful with the questions I was answering. I was literally answering every question. There wasn't one question that I didn't answer, basically. So she's stating that she did not do the Netflix doc for fame. She said that she specifically requested it not be included. And then they were like asking her, so she was just answering. Bubba states that he has text messages with the documentary crew stating that Rosie's social media is not relevant. So he's also confirming like, okay, we're not going to use her social media, right? Because they're dating still. And so he's like just checking it, like Rosie wants to make sure. So it seems like he's saying that he has some sort of text messages with the documentary crew talking about how Rosie's social media isn't relevant. I did not see that text message, but that's what he told us. Now, I do want to note that there are members of Dom and Davion's family that do not seem to appreciate what Rosie and Bubba have been saying, what they said in the Netflix documentary, and maybe things that have been said and done behind closed doors. I could imagine that they probably didn't appreciate maybe Bubba talking about the pendulum in the police interview. Like, I could see how that could be highly offensive to Davion's family as well. Rosie and Bubba state that they just want to know the truth of what happened. They expressed wishes that the trial could have been what they believe to be fair. They didn't necessarily think the trial was fair. They thought that Mackenzie's attorney was not that competent. They didn't like the fact that the defense did not call in an expert. So there was no expert called in to testify that Mackenzie's pots could have played or couldn't have played a role. So the trial only lasted 4 days. So they just felt like they don't definitively feel like they know what happened in the car that night, is how they state they feel. And while they do think that they would like a new trial, they also express like they know it would just open so many wounds for the victims' families. So like it seems like they get it. Rosie also says she feels like the families, quote, took us originally canceling those interviews as really suspect. And she says, recently, I didn't even know this happened, but they put it in the evidence file that Davion's mom emailed the police and was like, Rosie made this TikTok about somebody betraying her. And I'm assuming it's about Bubba because he's cooperating with the police, remember? And she says, I had no idea they were just taking my random TikToks. And I was following these TikTok trends. I had no idea that they connected the random videos and matched it up with me intimidating people to not speak with the police.
And again, Rosie playing the whole victim, like, oh, I had no idea that that's how they would take that post. Okay, well, Bubba says in his interview that you guys were on a break at the time of his police interview. So yeah, that, it's like, I feel like she's just lying, like trying to make it seem like, that post wasn't about that. I was just doing a TikTok trend. Then why did you and Bubba like break up around that time that he did his police interview?
I think she felt that way because she thought that I wasn't cooperating. Rosie says, we definitely, thinking back now, we should have just sat down and talked to the police the second everybody else did, because...
You think? Especially if you're out here saying, like, we just want to know the truth. Maybe your statements could have helped that direction of the investigation, like get towards the truth.
Everybody says that's somehow suspect, and we literally only canceled it because we really did not want to be involved in some big drug bust, especially when we have no credible knowledge. Obviously, Rosie being there for Halloween of 2022...
How would you be involved in some big drug bust if you had no credible knowledge? Like, why was that a fear?
And dressing up with Mackenzie as Playboy Cardi doesn't necessarily make Dom and Davion's family want to be more receptive to what they have to say either. To which Rosie says, so in the documentary, Rosie, there's this point where they show the Halloween picture and she's just like, it's Playboy Cardi. Anyone my age knows it's Playboy Cardi. So it's not really touched upon that was fucked up. So Rosie's just like, it's not a corpse, it's Playboy Cardi, right? And so Rosie was saying, yeah, I think they immediately, the family labeled me as like, oh, you're her crazy best friend and don't hold anybody accountable, and you guys are going around dressing as corpses or whatever, a few months after. And the matter of fact about that is, and they edited it down in the documentary to just like, oh, we just dressed as Playboy Cardi. But it was really like, no, like we really shouldn't have done that. We shouldn't have done that. I was irresponsible. I don't know. We were in college and there's so many things that I would have done differently in hindsight, not knowing how this was all going to play out. But there is a part where she kind of tries to explain their thought process, where she was like, at this point, Mackenzie was trying to do a lot of things for Dom and Davion. So she was explaining like how they had all planned to go visit Rosie at her college for Halloween because Ohio University is known for having the craziest Halloween, and that Dom loves Playboy Cardi. And there was like this explanation about it, which I feel like I did try my best to keep a neutral presentation thus far. And this is where I would have to voice my very strong disagreement. I think it's good that Rosie realized that they definitely shouldn't have done that, because it is, like she said, irresponsible. And they've all said that they believe that Halloween was a way to celebrate Dom and Davion's lives, and that even Mackenzie going to the Kid Cudi concert was a way to celebrate Dom. Maybe that's truly how they felt in their hearts as it's happening, but I think the core issue with the Halloween and Kid Cudi and all of that is it's just insensitive. It doesn't matter who you say you're doing it for. She could have been bawling her eyes out the entire time at all of these events. I don't think it's the morally correct thing to do. I don't think many of us could ever be in Mackenzie's shoes and do something like that. They stayed off their personal observations. They do not believe this was an incident where Mackenzie pre-planned an intentional murder plot. But they also state that even if it was some sort of freak accident or reckless driving, they both believe that prison time is still warranted. Rosie says, at the end of the day, the prison time is unarguable, and people do get arrested for killing people in car accidents all the time. I mean, it's not like anybody should just get away scot-free with nothing. She states that she thinks everyone just took it the complete opposite way and went crazy with the theories, but she says she thinks that there should be prison time, but that they should maybe factor in that she was only 17 and lost her boyfriend and friend. Bubba states that the only thing that would make prison time questionable would be if they could absolutely prove that there was some medical incident. Which, side note, I will say there were talks with our researchers, and I did see a lot of people bring this up, including Steve Shirilla brings this up later in a recent interview, that Dom's family were powerful in the area. Dom's mom is a criminal defense attorney, Christine Russo, and she did work for the prosecutor's office. And so she might know a lot of people. The judge that was presiding over the case, her last name is Russo. I don't think that there's any sort of, neither do Rosie and Bubba. They don't think that there's any sort of familial relation, because that would be
crazy.
Yeah, that would be crazy, right? But I think that there are conversations of like, how much sway did Christine Russo have in all of this? I don't know.
Like the fact that his mother worked for the prosecutor's office, the courtroom, small town, small world, especially in the court. Could that also be why it's possible she was overcharged? Like, we'll make an example of her for you because we know you. Like, again, just throwing questions out there.
A lot of people, including Rosie and Bubba, point out how Christine Russo was talking to the police in an interview, and she said something along the lines of like, I know Mackenzie's defense attorney. Like, I don't need to worry about him. Like, he's not a concern. I know his brother. Like, and she's just saying like, he's not a problem. He's not a problem. And some people have kind of interpreted this as like, he's not a problem because I know him. Like, I know him. I'm going to make sure he's not a problem. I actually did not interpret it like that. I actually interpreted it as she's clearly an analytical woman. She's a criminal defense attorney. I could see her trying to understand a lot of and there are defense attorneys who are problematic, who are problems, because they will go there and they will say some crazy shit, and they'll try to pull out all the craziest, and they'll do motion after motion after motion, like just drowning the whole case in just unnecessary paperwork. Like, I think it was meant so more like that.
Yeah.
I don't think she would ever say that to the police when it's about her son's life and death.
Yeah.
I will note that Bubba has voiced out again multiple times he could care less what happens to Mackenzie. Rosie has stated that she does not think that Mackenzie is this evil monster and did not care about either of these boys, or that she premeditated the whole thing or did it on purpose, and this is what I've gathered from reading through every single page of the 30,000 page document of text messages between Mackenzie and Dom. And I only say this because there's really no better way for me to try to explain the feeling that I had reading those messages. Not that my feelings are important in this matter, but those messages felt more akin to a domestic violence situation where the relationship is so incredibly toxic, and just the sheer oppressive nature of Mackenzie's text messages to specifically Dom and only Dom, and how she speaks to him, to me felt abusive. To me, if I was in that relationship or my friend was in that relationship with someone like Mackenzie, I would be scared for them. But Mackenzie could be very well sweet to Rosie and Bubba and portrayed herself differently, because that's also very typical in domestic violence situations. Not saying this is one, but with domestic violence, I mean, again, it doesn't always mean that she's hitting him or physically abusing him, but in these types of dynamics, from the text messages I saw, if I had to summarize the level of how it makes the reader feel suffocated, it feels reminiscent of an emotionally abusive relationship. And while the trial is another part that we're going to cover, I think the public opinion on this case, a lot of people from what I've seen, they don't necessarily believe that Mackenzie went out and plotted this whole thing days in advance. In fact, a lot of people think that Mackenzie is likely too narcissistic to want to harm herself just to harm Dom. But rather, there could have been a fight that broke out in the car. And in the escalation of rage or whatever emotion that could have come out in that moment, the crash was deliberate. That is how a lot of people feel. That is what they're saying. And I bring up Dee Dee not because I'm saying Mackenzie is is a domestic violence abuser, but because in relationships, people will behave in ways and do things that they will never do with their friends. It is very, very rare that you have someone on trial for abusing, punching their partner, and the abuser's friends come out and say, oh, they did that to me too, which we will be doing a full episode breaking down the entirety of the 30,000 pages of text messages so that you know what I'm talking about and you can come to your own conclusion. But I think that there could be a world where Rosie and Bubba did not see that side of Mackenzie at all and actually only saw a side to her.
All right. So I think you guys get the point of, that deep dive and statements that Rosie had made to Rotten Mango's team. We'll be going through the documents, the texts, and all that too. Every Friday night, we do the deep dives on Mackenzie Shirilla. Tomorrow night, we usually do our Hangout True Crime Community chat, but it's the 4th of July tomorrow night. Happy 4th, everybody. So I think we're going to move it to Sunday, and the plan is 9 o'clock Sunday night. So I hope you guys can come back here on Sunday and hang out with us for our low-key hangout on just chat about true crime community and the creators in it. And it's kind of just our chill evening to kind of decompress from the heavy subjects that we cover during the week. So during the week, keep an eye out for shorts and videos that I upload. And then the live streams are typically Friday and Saturday night. Tomorrow will be the 4th, so we'll skip it to Sunday night. Thank you to all my moderators. And I just wanted to thank everybody again for I've got the members that I want to put up on the screen again. So thank you so much. And again, thank you to all the moderators. And Hella for her Hella raid. And yeah, so I'll end it with the streamline of Rosie's statements in Netflix, the video that I put together in the beginning, and then it will just go to the outro. So thanks everybody who participated in chat. Good comments. We've got some more digging in this case to go through. Is the intent proven in this case? That's the question we're going to be asking ourselves when we do these deep dives. And did Rosie and Bubba know more about what they witnessed that night before everything happened, the crash, etc. So that's kind of the basis for everything. So good night, everybody. I'll play the Rosie statements that she made on Netflix, and then I'll go to the outro. So yeah, bye.
Chief Weaver again. Hey, Chief, how you doing? Not bad. So, just had a conversation with Landon. That was a very interesting conversation, I must say. He is not willing to talk. He says that he is not being threatened, and in his words, I'm at the top of the chain. Nobody messes with me. I'll just kick their ass. He seemed very. This is just my intuition or whatever. Whatever this is, he's involved.
It's so crazy because we had just graduated high school and this is who I would hang out with every single day. Every single day I'd wake up and hang out with a combination of these people. There was me, Kenzie, Davion, Dom, my boyfriend, Bubba. I was getting a phone call every single day or a text from Kenzie every day. What are we doing tomorrow? What are we doing the next day? Let's do this. Dom wants to go here. Davion wants to do this. Davion's there and he's laughing. He's the funniest guy. He's just goofy. And Dom and Kenzie, they're such a duo. They'd been together for 4 years. Those are my best friends I hang out with every single day. And I was just with them. And it's so crazy. That split second, changed all of our lives forever. There were so many people there, and so many people were asking so many questions to all of us. They're like, you were with them, what were you guys doing? What did they take? They were on something. They didn't even give us a second to process what had just happened. In high school is when I met Kenzie. We started commenting on each other's Instagrams before we even talked to each other in person. We'd comment, DM back and forth, or Snapchat. She'd make cute little TikTok videos of her trying on outfits. She would come to school with a purse instead of a bag, which I thought was really cute. I got along with her well because I'm you're cute. She's you're cute. And I'm okay, we get along so well. I met her, I had 200K on TikTok and on YouTube. She had a few thousand followers. She always wanted to be a model like me. So me and Kenzie would hang out all the time and just go do photo shoots. With Kenzie came Dom. With Dom came Kenzie everywhere they went. Dom would buy her clothes. He really loved designer stuff and just name brand, as typical high schoolers do. We were kind of like the stoners a little bit. It would just be back-to-back fun. I was just texting her to bring over some weed for the night. We were also talking about doing the mushrooms, which is why they brought them with them and they had them in the car with them. The police called to set up an interview and I was like, I'm not doing it. People always say the police will like try to say crazy things, especially if you're like alone and you're a teenager. It doesn't seem like we're trying to figure out what happened in the accident. It seems like we're trying to track down the next drug dealers. First of all, it wasn't a party at all, because in my opinion and in everybody that was there, we call that a sleepover, and that was just a friend sleepover that we would normally do. I brought like a coloring book and like colored pencils. We were watching YouTube videos. We were having deep conversations, just sitting around, and we were also talking about doing the mushrooms. But then by the time they got over, it was like 12 a.m. and we're all like, it's too late.
So no mushrooms?
Yeah, we were all just kind of like, it's really late, and we had like weed to smoke, so we just smoked weed. Kenzie didn't even smoke that night. Kenzie was sleeping by like 3 a.m. All I remember is Dom just like petting her head all night and just like cuddling up to her on the couch, and she was sleeping and he was just like caressing her hair. There was not one argument. There was not one moment of tension. There was not one bad vibe towards anybody. And then really early in the morning, around 5, Dom came into the kitchen and I was like, are you guys leaving? I was with them every single day, and it wasn't daily arguments. It wasn't weekly arguments. It wasn't even like anything crazy like that. Mackenzie loved her life a lot and she really liked what she had going on with Dom. I didn't think she would get arrested at all for this. That's the last thing I'm thinking about, is now she's going to be arrested. I'm thinking about, oh my God, our friends are dead. How are we going to recover from this? I've seen so many people be like, this dramatic girl, she's going to prison worrying about her bracelets. But all of her bracelets are like Dom bracelets. She just didn't want to break the things that Dom had given her. It's like the last thing that she has. She was so sad about it all. I would never ever see her purposely wanting to hurt herself. Say that is, and she's so sad like mentally, I don't think that's the way to do it. Her birthday was coming up. She had an expensive designer outfit ready to wear. She had presents ready, wrapped up from Dom that she still has never opened. Nothing makes sense. It really doesn't. This video was made in 2021. You can see the date right there, April 2021, a whole year before. Anybody my age like grew up with Marina and the Diamonds. This is just like a song that everybody knows, and then it turned into a TikTok trend. We all have made our videos to this exact sound, like to the trend. I post probably like 5 to 7 TikToks a day. At that rate of content, I don't even remember what I said yesterday. You cannot use that against her.